Welcome, everyone. This is America's ultramarathon expert, Let'sRun.com co-founder Weldon Johnson, wearing the new Hoka One One Carbon X shoes. I will be joined by America's #1 intersex expert, Robert Johnson, whose article on Caster Semenya went viral. We're at about 250,000 views now. And we'll also be joined by, I guess, just the peevish Jonathan Galt. We got a ton to talk about this week. The Doha Diamond League is in the books. Track season officially underway. We've got Eliud Kipchoge Breaking 2 version 2. I've been to my first ultra marathon, Hoka Project Carbon X. World Relays are this weekend. Peyton Jordan was last week. We've got more Caster Semenya talk, audio of the week, deleted thread of the week. And at the end, we have an hour talk with USATF half marathon champion Stephanie Bruce, who has gone from the fringes of the running world to being a 2-time national champion. We've got her cool story. Robert, let's get this started.
Well, I take that as a compliment. Weldon was meant to be complimentary, but folks, I'm also the voice of the Ivy League, fresh back from my ESPN Plus broadcasting duties. And he also said I was America's expert on the intersex issue. I view myself as a worldwide expert, having appeared on the BBC radio. John, did your family in Britain call you to say, wow, I heard your boss, you must work for such a prominent company?
No, I mean, I was impressed here on 5 Live, but I mean, if we're going to give each other ultra marathon expert, intersex expert, can I just be, if we're going to just make up titles for each other, can I be world's greatest sex machine or something like that? I mean, these are just, I don't know what the base, I would say you guys are informed, but I don't know if you're the world's foremost expert on either of those topics.
You can be, John, you can be the world's preeminent running journalist, but no one really cares about track and field running anymore. So Robert and I are venturing off to other stuff.
Yep. We were looking at the stats. We realized that like the most popular articles in Let's Run history are all like intersex articles. I've gone viral with my article. Before we get to Caster Semenya Weldon, let's give a shout out to the sponsors who are sponsoring all of our ultra coverage and this week's podcast.
Hoka One One. They put on the Project Carbon X event, the first ultramarathon I've ever been to. They're sponsoring our exploration of ultramarathons for the full month of May. And I am wearing, as I've promised, the new Project Carbon X shoe. I don't know what it says about me that I got my Carbon X shoe on Friday and I didn't go on my first run in it until yesterday. I've been wearing it a lot, walking around, but I kicked ass in Central Park. That's all I can say. My dogs they're at a new level now. Shoe coming out May 15th on HokaOneOne.com. They put on a crazy event, 6 hours live streaming. I'd never been to an ultra, and most ultras aren't done like this. It was very fun, and Jim Walmsley walked away with the 50-mile world best and then fell apart. Well, Hideaki Yamauchi broke the 100K world record. So we can talk about that a little bit.
He broke the 100K world record?
Oh, sorry. Fake news. He won the race. Nobody was breaking the world record in that heat. 80 degrees and sunny, or 80 degrees in the sun. Thank you, Hoka. And also, I haven't taken any CBD oil for the podcast in a while. Here it is. That's a little Floyd de Leadville, the tincture, going underneath my tongue. If you want to save 15% on CBD oils, go to floydsofleadville.com and use code RUN2019. Now 15% off for Let's Run visitors.
Oh, wow. He's actually taking it. Proof, Weldon, he puts his money where his mouth is, or in this case, he puts the CBD oil where his mouth is.
So last week we started off with Caster Semenya, and let's do it again this week. And, you know, last week when we were recording the podcast, it was just like an hour or two after we'd all woken up and seen the news that the IAAF had won the case. And as the week went on, it was really bothering me how I realized this story was being covered in quote unquote mainstream press. To me, it was borderline journalism malpractice. Every article started off with some comment about naturally high testosterone levels. And I just like the average person who doesn't follow this day to day has no idea what's going on. And it hit me when I got an email from my mom, who is not a big track and field fan, but follows sports and is an athlete herself. And she sent me some email, and the way it was worded, it was so confusing. I'm like, she's got no idea what's going on here. Actually, I spoke to her after I wrote my article, which again has gone viral worldwide thanks to the power of Twitter, really, Facebook as well, and Google. But I think it was because the tweet was so succinct. It said, "Are you confused by the Caster Semenya story?" And then mentioned something like, "We imagine you are, because here's what NPR and BBC, Washington Post aren't telling you." But my mom, when I talked to my mom afterwards, I was like, what were you thinking? She's like, oh, I thought like the way these things were written that they were contrasting her to a transgender person. Transgender people obviously have elevated testosterone. And I'm like, no, I think they're just, I don't know, they're trying to confuse you. They don't mention the fact that she's XY. They don't mention the fact, we have it for a fact now. Testes, she has testicles, internal, not ovaries. So I just sort of put that out there. I think I helped clarify some things out. If I'm still debating maybe trying to get with Weldon and writing a letter for the New York Times, because they published an article 2 or 3 days after the initial news came out. It's called The Myth of Testosterone, which to me is one of the dumbest articles I've ever read. And apparently this woman has written a book about it, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, you could read the book. I think Mom was thinking that Castor was perhaps transgender, trying to compete in the female category. And then the way all the articles were written, she's just like, oh, this is the traditional woman with high testosterone who they're not letting compete. And she's like, that doesn't seem fair. When in reality, it's a very complex situation. She's definitely what I think 99.9% of people would call intersex. And so then the question becomes, what category should she compete in? The open/men's category or the protected female category? And the IAAF has said, she can compete in the open unless she reduces her testosterone, which we at Let'sRun.com have always supported. And it's pretty interesting. She's definitely intersex, and why these intersex athletes seem to congregate in the 800 is something that I think scientists are still trying to figure out. But some new stats came out today. I think that it said that 7 out of 1,000 athletes of their athletes are intersex, which seems very high.
Yeah, the IAAF has issued 2 statements on its website. Yeah, almost 1% of the elite athletes in the IAAF or women's athletics are intersex, and it's way higher than that in the 800. There's a lot of confidential information that they don't want to release names, but I think they said it was 140 times more likely to be an elite 800 runner than you are just to be intersex. But, one of the things that I tried to focus on when I appeared on the BBC was sort of, and John listened to the interview, was I basically, my friend who was she's a speechwriter in the past for Democratic candidates of note, females, but former track runner. She's like, look, when you go on there, just focus on the fact that someone has to lose out on this. Is it going to be Lindsay Sharp and all these other people that are XY, or is it the small percentage of the people that are XX, or the small percentage of the intersex women XY? And to me, it has to be the intersex women just by a numbers game. I was most sort of encouraged by all the emails I got from people thanking me for writing the article. I got a few. It's actually interesting to see how the response has been different. I've gotten a ton of emails. I'd say 90% of them are positive, a couple negative. But if you go to Twitter, and they had a study about 2 weeks ago about how liberal Twitter is. Twitter people, most of the comments are negative. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think people just like to be negative on Twitter as well, more than being positive. Generally, you'll get more criticism than people patting you on the back. My question, though, in this whole situation is the people who think Semenya should be able to compete and who are against having to lower her testosterone. I'd just like them to answer a question. Do they believe there should be 2 categories? And if so, where would they draw the line? Because you have to draw the line somewhere between male and female, okay? And the IAF has attempted to draw that line based on testosterone, which I think is a pretty good place to draw it. It's not perfect, but there is no perfect solution. So what happens if you get someone who is intersex, but has even more male characteristics than Semenya? Someone with a penis who has even higher testosterone, but they also have some sort of difference of sexual development, and they have some female characteristics, but look like someone who most people would categorize as male, but they are partially intersex. Does that person get to compete? Where is this line being drawn? Because I have yet to see anyone who supports Semenya say exactly where that line should be drawn.
Thank you, John. Maybe you were the one that gave me that advice when I went on the BBC, and it wasn't my friend Victoria. But that was one of the things I was trying to ask this professor. They had me debating, like, okay, my basic thing is, do you believe we should draw a line? Because if you say no, then we can't debate this. But then if the answer is yes, where do you draw it? She kept saying, like, I want to be inclusive. So I took that to mean, okay, well, what is I should have, and John's sort of critique of my radio interview was, okay, you should have asked, what does that mean? I just took it to mean, I said, so Bruce Jenner could win the Olympic decathlon and then a week later win the Olympic heptathlon at the Indy Olympics. And she's like, that's a scare tactic. But she wouldn't answer the question. I didn't ask her flat out. But thank you, John, for making it succinct.
I mean, I think one easily could draw the line saying, oh, okay, intersex, they compete in the female category if they want to. But then that would beg the question, where do transgender athletes get to compete? And I think, honestly, without the emergence of transgender athletes and sort of, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if ironic is the right word, but Bruce Jenner, one of the world's, probably in the history of the world, maybe the most famous decathlete. I don't know, he's on the Wheaties boxes. Just the time where track and field was in is very popular. Now Caitlyn Jenner has done so much for transgender awareness and rights and that sort of stuff. I wonder if without the emergence of transgenderism, transgender athletes in sport as an issue, if more people wouldn't draw the line sort of against Caster.
Yeah, I mean, the transgender thing, it's obviously different, but I do think if the IAF had ruled if the CAS had ruled in favor of Semenya, I think that probably would have helped transgender athletes' cases who are trying to compete as the gender they identify with without treatment.
Before we wrap up this Semenya testosterone talk, can I just talk briefly about the myth of the testosterone in the book by Dr. Katrina Karkakas and Rebecca M. Jordan Young in their excerpt that appeared in the New York Times. Yes, as Ross Tucker said, it's hard to prove like in an individual event, like the people with the highest testosterone might not do the best, but to act like testosterone isn't really important for sports is so absurd. Like, and like the world record for women at 800 meters at like age 8 and 9 is like it's almost the same as men. It's like 2 seconds off. It's like 2:22 versus 2:24. But when they go through puberty, there's a gigantic gap. I mean, it's 12 seconds off. It's like 6 times as much. So that I can't believe that people that consider themselves to be feminists make this argument, because what else would explain why women are 10 to 12% behind men in all these track events? You're basically saying that women are just inferior athletes. They don't try as hard or something. It's just so insulting. And, the other thing that confused me is they act like it's inhumane for Semenya to take these medications to lower testosterone. Most people can do it by just taking a birth control pill. There's millions of women on birth control pills across the country, across the world. So, and no one's saying she has to do that. She just doesn't have to run the 800 meters as a woman in professional sports. She can run other events. She can run, as an amateur.
And there was one other thing that really annoyed me in some of this coverage. And there was a tweet by author-writer Jessica Luther that encapsulated it for me. She says, "I'm sick and tired of all the people saying something like Semenya has done nothing wrong. She has competed fairly," before going on to trash her rights and her body in order to protect other women. It's racist and sexist and also exhausting and sad. I just think that's totally unfair. I'm not racist. I'm not sexist. I have an opinion on this issue. I don't think Semenya should be able to compete in the women's category as she currently is. I don't think that makes me racist. I think I'm trying to I'm in favor of fair competition between women. And I think if you got Semenya, not that Semenya isn't a woman, but she has high testosterone, one of the dividing factors between the sexes. And to me, I just don't think it's fair that she's competing in these races. We've seen the outcome. She hasn't lost an 800-meter race since the start of 2016. I just think the fact that I hold an opinion on this that is different to hers doesn't mean that I'm racist. Like, I'd like an explanation for how it makes me racist or how it makes me sexist. I just don't think that's fair. It's unfair for people on the other side to just call racism or sexism if someone disagrees with them.
Well, I think that in the year 2019, people like to use that slur because it shuts the debate down. I think it's very common. And I was really hoping when I was on the BBC, they were going to accuse us of being a racist. I was really hoping that was going to be the accusation, because then I was just going to come up with 2 words, Eric Schenniger. And I don't think most people know about Eric Schenniger, but Eric Schenniger was the 1966 women's downhill world champion. And she showed up at the 1968 Olympics, and they did a test, and they're like, "We have some news to tell you. You are XY." And she couldn't believe it. Like, she had raised her whole life. She was a woman, and it was shocking. And since learning that, she transitioned to male, and has fathered children. Is now, I mean, if you take a picture of him and make a Wikipedia, looks like a normal guy. So they did this to a white Austrian in 1968. So please, this is not about race. This is not about, and that was one of the things I thought I was really good at in the BBC appearance that I showed up was Castor said she wants to inspire the youth. To me, this is about inspiring the youth, the next generation. If you're a young girl and you look up on TV and you're dreaming of being an 800 runner and you think, why are all those women intersex? That's not going to be inspiring. That's going to discourage you. And we've gotten emails from people who have kids and they're just watching track. And we know that Castor Semenya is a woman. She's not a man. But little kids look up at the track. And when this email was like, my kid said, why are the boys running against the girls? So that a 4-year-old can sense that something's different there, but adults can't do it.
Yeah, but in terms of testosterone making a difference, when we talked to Stephanie Bruce at the end of the podcast, she talks about how one of the reasons she got into running was when she was a young kid in the fitness test, she'd beat the boys. And as you get older, you're not beating as many boys. But if you're a world-class woman, you're beating like 98% of most boys. So it's pretty interesting. And another thing she sort of pointed out, I'm like, you guys wanted to know why women are doing so well in their late 30s running or mid 30s. And she's like, women get more testosterone as they age. As they approach menopause, sort of the ratios change, which is kind of interesting. So we'll have more testosterone talk later, but let's turn to track talk. I mean, we're almost 20 minutes on Castor Semenya. If this was the final time we saw her on the track, what a run, 154.98 in Doha. Season opener, and people always wondered if she's sort of been holding back a bit. I never really bought that argument, but this is only the 4th time she went under sub 155, and to open the season like that after running a 5K a few weeks ago, a great run for her if this is the final time she's seen on the elite stage. But she said she's going to fight these regulations, so we may still see Castor all year competing.
Well, I don't think we're going to see her all year. I mean, she is not allowed to compete in any Diamond Leagues the rest of the season. The earliest she could compete right now, as the rules state, is the World Championships in the 800. She could run like a 5,000 or a 200, but I don't think that's going to happen. So until these rules are overturned, she can't compete on the Diamond League.
Lawyers, John, lawyers. She'll get lawyers. She could run a 5K, right, as you said. But I mean, that race got the most attention. But I don't know. Maybe there's not much to say about that one. Semenya won it. Francine Saba was second. She's also affected by these regulations. And American Ajay Wilson, third, sort of posed to be the standard bearer in this event if these rules are not overturned. So, I mean, think how differently Ajay's career would be if she was winning all these races.
Should be a 2-time world champion indoors. Should be the world champion outdoors. She might be an Olympic medalist because, remember, she didn't make the final because she had 2 women believed to be intersex in her Olympic semifinal. She'd have a very different career. But she is the favorite now for the 2019 World Championships, assuming the rules don't change.
Well, if we're going to talk about people missing out because of intersex issues or unfairness in the women's 800, I don't think we start with A.G. Wilson. She's still young. She can be the face of this event, maybe even all the way through 2028 when we have to host the Olympics here in the United States. But how about the woman that lost the most to me is Alysia Montaño. I mean,
Alysia Montaño.
Alysia, excuse me, John. Thank you. Let's go back to 2012. If you take out all the intersex athletes and dopers, she's the gold medalist. She never even won an Olympic medal. So that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to be accused of saying who's intersex and who's doper, but that's my personal opinion about it. And, this event in general is just going to be completely different than it was around that time.
Yeah, times are going to be slower as well. You're not going to have Semenya towing people out to 156s or 157s, which Ajay Wilson ran 155 in 2017, American record. But let's move on. There were other races in Doha. One of the ones that caught my eye, the men's steeplechase. Now, be honest, guys, did you expect when you saw the start list of this race that Hillary Bohr would be contending for the win and would have the lead heading into the final barrier of the race?
I'm glad you went there first because I was just looking at Doha. I'm like, I'm going to bring this up. They're not going to mention it. No, I did not expect that. And I started yelling in my apartment. I was like, yeah, go! It was so exciting. It's why I watch track and field. I have no idea what the broadcast was like in the U.S. if they even got behind it, but it was shocking to me. He was up there leading on the backstretch, kind of looking over his shoulder, like, what the F is going on? We should have maybe had him as a guest on the podcast. He got a PR, and El Bakali, who was fifth at the bell, he was the class of that field, silver medalist, and class won out, which it often does in track and field and horse racing. We can talk Kentucky Derby too if you guys want. But what a run by Hillary. He looked so exhausted coming in. I think maybe if he could have stayed a little more composed, a little more relaxed, he could have won it. But there aren't many upsets in track. But watching him run really inspired me. Thank you.
Yeah, it was also, I was generally behind the scenes here. What we'll do is we'll assign each person at letsrun.com will be assigned a certain event to write about. And so I was not writing about the steeple. And so I was sort of working on my event. I look up the steeple. There's probably about 2 laps to go. I'm like, holy shit, Hillary Bohr's up front. Then it's like the bell. I'm like, holy crap, he could win this thing. It was awesome to see him going for it. And El Bakali, for him, some redemption, because he, for so often in the last few years, he's been the guy who's sort of been pushing the pace up front, only to have Conseslus Kipruto run him down and outkick him in the home straight. We saw it in the Diamond League final last year, unforgettable. And so for him to sort of turn the tables, he didn't, obviously, Conseslus Kipruto was not in this race. He had a little injury issue that he had to pull out. But for him to be the one kicking someone down from behind was a pretty cool flip of the script. And the other thing is, the Diamond League, the season opener, there aren't that many upsets on the Diamond League circuit, but the season opener is probably that is going to be where it's going to happen because these guys haven't raced for a long time. We haven't seen them against each other. So that's how you get, a 17-year-old winning the women's high jump, which we also saw the girl from Ukraine, Yaroslava Mahuchik. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but yeah, Bohr's race was the highlight for me. He got second, 8:08, third fastest American ever. And there was also a good men's 800 as well with Donovan Brazier, Nigel Amos, Emmanuel Correa. That one was very close down to the wire with Amos pulling out the win.
Yeah, the men's 800 to me was disappointing in terms of the time. I think it was 144.
144.2, yeah.
I thought for sure we'd see a 143. But back to Bohr, John, I was like thinking to myself, where did this come from? 8:08.30, right? He's only 1/10 of a second off number 2 all time in America. 8:08.31, maybe 8:08.20, I think.
8:08.40 is Hillary Bohr's time. 8:08.30 is Stanley Cabene's time, number 2 all-time U.S.
So right there for number 2. I was thinking, like, where did this come from? Because I knew that he didn't run well at World Cross, only 60th. But then I did a little research and was reminded that, he did run, well, he got 4th at USA's and cross, but then 3 weeks after that, he ran 13:14 for 5,000 indoors. So obviously that's how it shows you how sick World Cross is. He runs 13:14 and then gets his butt spanked at World Cross.
Yeah, but let's not pretend all the guys who are beating. I mean, there are a bunch of Brits in front of him. No way, all those guys are running 13:14.
But John, when he ran 13:14, that was third. Who beat him, and how fast did they run?
Didn't his brother beat him? It was Emmanuel Bohr, I think, was one of the guys who beat him, and then I think there was one other stud who might have been in that race. I would have to look it up.
Folks, if you ever want to go to the archives, you can just click on archives in the top right of your homepage and then go to any date.
Oh, Celiac won that race.
As they're looking that up, remember, 5-star ratings on iTunes. Please, thank you. We need a new name for the podcast. We're serious about this. We need a name just for the overall podcast. Help us get picked up in the rankings. But this thing is really taking off. International audience.
John and the Brojos.
Yes, John and the Brojos. Where Rojo makes a fool of himself and John says it. When I was getting ready for the BBC interview, I put up a podcast. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be on the BBC in 20 minutes. I was asking for some advice. And people were like, come on, guys, chip in. No one's telling the story right. We got to really help him. And then one of the best quotes, this should be like Message Board Post of the Week. We should have an award where we should hand out Carbon X shoes to people. And someone's like, Rojo's screwed. He can't turn into Jonathan Galt like he can on the podcast to save himself.
Yeah, maybe we should have given Carbon X shoes to the Post of the Week instead of we're going to give away stuff to the best post about ultras, but we could have just done best overall post, but we didn't do that.
Yeah, Edward Cheswick 13:08, Emmanuel Bohr 13:10. So did Emmanuel Bohr run USA Cross too?
Yeah, got second behind Shadrach Kipchirchir. So yeah, do we want to go any more in depth on that 800? I mean, I thought Brazier looked pretty solid. He didn't have great positioning, but didn't give up. I think that was a big positive I took away from that race. He worked his way up to third. Sometimes we'll see if he's out of it. He'll sort of just. I'm not going to say he's not trying, but you can see he just sort of mentally gets out of it and disconnects from a race sometimes. That didn't happen in Doha. He was running hard all the way. He, couldn't overcome the deficit, that was because he was against the two best 800 runners in the world. Nigel Amos and Emmanuel Correa were the best two guys in the world last year. So for Brazier to get third in that race against a lot of other good guys, very good for a season opener for him. And I think the best is yet to come, I think, from Donovan Brazier.
Yeah, it was a great way to start the Diamond League season. That was the first men's race on the track of the whole Diamond League season, and you had the three best going at it. So it was a good run. I feel like now that Donovan's part of Alberto's group, I honestly feel like the mindset changes. They're taught to be the best. I feel like the possibility of quitting sort of somehow exits the mind. But one thing about the Diamond League, so do we want to see them go race 8 times the rest of the year? The same three guys in the 800 every time?
No.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for some of these distance races, the same 8 guys running up and having these fixed fields, that's going to solve our sports problems? No.
No, but I do like to see big matchups, and we do have a few that were announced this week. Michael Norman and Noah Lyles, they're going to be racing each other over 200 meters in Rome. I believe that's June 6th. I'm just double checking the date right there. Yes, that's correct. And then in Shanghai, so next weekend, we've got Abdurrahman Samba and Rai Benjamin, the second and third fastest men ever in the hurdles. Those two are racing each other in Shanghai, May 18th. That is the matchup. We didn't see it all in 2018. People wanted to see it, and now it's coming next weekend. So that is going to be exciting. I think those matchups are great. We don't want to see them every week, but we don't want to wait until Worlds till we have to see it. So I think that's going to be very exciting.
Speaking of the 800, is Amos still with the Oregon Track Club?
Yes.
I mean, guys, we got to remember he's a guy that ran 141, right? At 19.
7 years ago at the Olympics, crazy.
But again, he had Rhodesia towing him out. I mean, he's run 142 since then, but unless it's very hard to run 141, but it's a little bit easier when you have a guy running 140 up front towing you along.
Yeah, but it's good to see him sort of get his career back on track. Remember, this is the guy that would like to be the DJ and kind of live the lifestyle, and he's only 25, so he's kind of gotten it going together. At Worlds in 2017, he won a bunch of races, but it was only 5th in the Worlds. Although, okay, John, let's show your expertise. Who won the 2017 World Championship 800?
Pierre-Ambroise Boss of France.
No hesitation. Very good.
Silver medalist Adam Schott. Bronze medalist Kipchoge Bet of Kenya, who has since been popped for doping. So
I'm trying to look. Again, we can see what John's doing right now. His eyes were glancing towards. It looked like a TV. Were you looking that up, or was that off the top of your head?
I knew that.
It was too quick, John.
I was there. He won. It's the fucking World Championships, Robert. And the random French guy who hadn't run a race. Well, he wasn't random, but he hadn't won a race all year. It was totally out of nowhere. It was a crazy race. He should have won. Wasn't even that fast, which I think was only 1:45 winning time.
No, 1:44.6. Jonathan Galt, folks.
All right. See, I'm not perfect, but yeah, that was interesting. But no, Robert, to say Nigel Amos, nice to finally see him back on track. He's been one of the best guys in the world for almost the entire last half decade. Since he was 2014, he was the best guy in the world. Probably 2015 was close to it. 2016, I think he was banged up. 2017, he was the favorite coming into Worlds and blew it. Didn't run well. 2018, he was the number 2 guy in the world behind Correa. It's not like this guy. He hasn't been running 141, but
I guess just 2016 was the year to have a bad time to have a really bad year.
Yeah, I'm just saying to say that this is Nigel Amos is back. He finally won. He won a couple Diamond Leagues last year.
No, I'm just saying it's good to have him back in general, John. It looked like for a while that he might be going away.
It didn't really look like that to me, but
well, he ran 141 in 2012, then he ran 144 in 2013, so that's not good. 2014 and 15 were better. 2016 was bad. So since he's come back to America, he's been consistent.
Okay.
We need some field event talk. We had 2 standout performances in Doha. 17-year-old Ukrainian high jumper. I'd never heard of her before, even though she's world youth superstar. Yaroslava Mahuchik. I will eventually, by Doha, I promise to know how to pronounce her name. She won the whole thing, 1.1 meter 99.
196.
Oh, excuse me. She's jumped 199 in the past. And Daniel Stahl, the Swedish discus thrower, was just crushing Diamond League record after Diamond League record. No one had ever thrown under 70 meters, and he did 3 throws over 70 meters.
Well, this is the year to get the Diamond League record on the discus because it might not be a Diamond League event after the end of this season. So if you're going to get it this year.
Yeah, John and I were actually debating that. Like, he had 3 throws farther than the Diamond League record, but he only broke the Diamond League record twice because one of those throws didn't beat his own record. Like, if he threw it like in round 2, then he surpassed it in round 3, but then round 4 wasn't bad. Like, they weren't all in order, but pretty amazing. And I put out a good tweet of him sort of dancing. I like the guy's personality. Like, it's pretty good. And while we're at it, you can watch, like the shot put and the pole vault commercial free if you subscribe to NBC Gold. It still drives me nuts that there's no like dedicated track feed. Like, you can't do that. Like, they'll cut to the field events. I would love to have just a camera on one of these distance events if I'm paying $75. Like, and I guess the way that works is because the same cameras maybe that are, well, I don't know.
I agree. One more thing on Daniel Stahl. He was the Let's Run quote of the day today, and I thought it was really great. There's a competition at the Paavo Games in Finland, and if you break the Finnish all-comers record in the discus or javelin, you win your own private island. And his quote was, "It will be fantastic to jump and swim in the sea straight from the sauna. I have not experienced that in Finland yet. The cabin should be fit for winter and big enough to have friends and family to visit. My summers will be full of javelin throw in the near future." I think that was a mistranslation because he's a discus thrower. "But when I retire, I would like to spend my summers fishing and relaxing. The cabin should be made from wood and it should be functional. It should have a fireplace, small kitchen, and a dock where one could sit and watch the evening sun with a girlfriend." I mean, doesn't that sound terrific? Watching the sunset in Finland on your own private island. That sounds pretty cool right there.
Daniel, if you're listening to the podcast, I would love to come visit if you do win the island. Not very handy. Maybe I could help you build a sauna though, or whatever you need.
Yeah, we can record a special edition of the podcast live from Daniel Stahl's Finnish island. All right. Anything else on Doha, gentlemen? I think that we covered the major stuff. Hellen Obiri beat Genzebe Dibaba in a great women's 3,000. That was pretty interesting. It was fast times all around there. Obiri won it in 8:25.60. Dibaba was second, 8:26.20. Then you had the world record holder in the steeplechase, Beatrice Chepkoech, was fourth in 8:29. So that was a pretty fast race. And Dean Asher-Smith won the 200 pretty easily. Dalila Muhammad crushed everyone on the 400 hurdles. Ramal Guliev won the 200. You guys can check out the Let's Run results page for more, but I think we covered the big stories from Doha.
All right. Do you guys want to turn to deleted thread of the week, audio of the week, or maybe like sponsored segment of the week where you guys ask me anything about the ultramarathon?
How about road race of the week?
Well, what about Eliud Kipchoge? We're not going to talk about Kipchoge's big plans?
Let's go to the road and then get to that.
All right.
We got to talk about Kipchoge, but before, let's talk about Prague. The marathon there. Israel's Lorna Salpeter, who was born in Kenya and came over to Israel to be like a nanny, I think, for someone at the embassy, picked up running in Israel, is now run 2:19 in the marathon. That's pretty ridiculous. So congrats to her. I think she's only like the third European woman to break 2:20. But America's Kellen Taylor was in that race. She finished in 2:26, which is very similar to her PR. I mean, she ran 2:24 in Grandma's last year, but that's a little bit wind-aided. So I would say they're probably similar in terms of I think when she ran 2:26 at the time, 2:24 at the time, I'm like, look, this is probably equivalent to about a 2:26. And hey, proven right yet again. But she did it the hard way. She went out in 71 for the first half, still held on for 2:26. What do we think about that? There's a thread up right now saying the women's Olympic trials will actually be interesting, and they're giving Caitlyn Taylor a shot. Weldon, what do you think?
Of course, they'll be interesting. They'll actually be interesting. They were interesting last time. They're going to be interesting this time. I don't think that's a debate. But anyway, Weldon, your thoughts on Caitlyn Taylor?
Yeah, I think a 2:26 going out that hard shows she's at the, she's probably not at the Jordan Hussein level, but she's knocking on the door at the trials. I think a lot of people probably saw the trials, a big 4 with Craig, Jose, Flanagan, and Linden.
What about Huddle and Sisson?
Oh, well, they were new. So big 6. I knew I was leaving somebody out. So yeah, we'll take out Flanagan because we know she's probably not going to even really be there. And Linden's getting old.
But Flanagan's not going to be there. Why'd she have surgery then?
Maybe she'll be there. Maybe she won't. Actually, she'll probably will be there. But Sisson, yeah, I mean, it's just going to be great. But now I would say, yes, you put her in the mix. And I will be rooting for Stephanie Bruce. I explained why in the podcast. I'm allowed to root for her since when I was back in the day training, she came through Flagstaff. So that's official. Stephanie Bruce will want to be in that mix. But the one thing she hasn't figured out since her childbirth is running a good marathon. But yeah, there's sort of the question is like, yeah, okay, after the big whatever, 5 or 6, can anyone be in that equation? And I think, yes, Kellen Taylor's in that equation.
I don't think so. I mean, look, what do you mean in the equation? I just don't think she's going to make the team. We have all those women ahead of her. I think Amy Cragg, Molly Huddle, Emily Sisson, Des Linden, Shalane Flanagan, Jordan Hesse. I think at least 3 of those women are going to show. Or I would say probably 4 of those women will show up to the trials healthy and fit. And that's going to be the battle is between those women. I think we saw it in the last trials with Cara Goucher, Amy Cragg, Des Linden, and Shalane Flanagan. Those were the 4 studs on paper, and they went 1 through 4. And I think Kellen Taylor is a good marathoner, but she happens to be competing at a time where the U.S. has never been more competitive at the women's marathon. We have 2 major champions. We have a world championship medalist. We have a woman who's run 2:20 and is trying to break the American record this fall. It's just we had a woman who just ran 2:23 in her debut in London. That's a minute faster than Kellen Taylor's ever run, and that was on with the benefit of the wind. I just think Kellen Taylor's a good marathoner, but you need to be doing really special stuff in the marathon right now to be in contention for that Olympic spot, and I just think she's a cut below them. I don't really see a situation where she makes the team.
I agree 100% with John. I think there's a big 6, and they could have the trials race with just those 6. Now, I'm not saying I want everyone in. I want top 3 going. But those big 6 aren't losing to other people unless something goes wrong. But there's question marks about a lot of those big 6. Let's talk about them. Everyone except for Sisson. Sisson seems to be made for the marathon. She knocked it out of the park in her first marathon. She's young. She's doing great. Hesse, hey, she was injury prone. She missed a whole year. But I would say Hesse and Sisson I'm most confident in. Craig's 35. She's been running terribly recently. By the way, wasn't she supposed to run last week? Did she run in Stanford? Supposed to run somewhere.
Yeah, she got the world championship standard in the Stanford 10K.
Okay. So she's turning around. Flanagan's having surgery. She's 37. Linden's 35. Huddle's 34, I think. Huddle, to me, has not necessarily proven she can run a fast one. So maybe you could put, she's been second in New York, though, which is better than anything. We were talking about Taylor 4 years ago. I think she's got a shot, but she's going to need some of those people. Could she beat an aging, if Flanagan's not there, could she beat an aging Linden? I think she maybe could. So, yeah, I guess she could get 3rd.
Oh, actually, sorry. Amy Cragg did not race. I didn't see her in the Stanford results. Sorry. I think I made that up. I don't think she did race at Stanford.
So I think there's a lot of question marks about the 3rd spot, and if Hesse's hurt, so yeah, then she's right there. She's definitely the clear-cut 7th best, I think.
If everyone's on their A game, yes, she's 7th best, but they're getting older, as you said. Robert's just like, oh, Emily Sisson, no problem. I don't know. Stephanie Bruce beat Emily Sisson last year in the USA 10K on the track. So it's not like everyone shows up and runs their absolute PR at the age of when they were 32 years old. People get older, they're hurt, they come off stuff. And would you guys agree this was a run in the right direction for her? Yes, she faded, but she still ran 2:26 going out at 2:22.
Oh, I think she deserves a lot of credit for going out in 71. A lot. I was rooting for her 4 years ago. I like the underdogs. I like the smaller teams. I don't want the entire team to be the Nike team. They already own USATF. Their logo is going to be on the jersey regardless. So, Hoke NAZ Elite, Ben Rosario, Kellen Taylor, good luck to you guys. Hopefully this will motivate you. Just record me doubting you, and then you can play it when you get top 3.
Because we know they're all listening because Stephanie Bruce is on the podcast at the end.
Yeah, I guess I will say, Robert, you did make a good point. Things do go. There are question marks about some of the top women. Things do go wrong in the marathon. That said, I do think it's quite unlikely that Kellen Taylor makes the team. But yeah, if she because also remember she's in her 30s as well. She has to come into the trials fit, healthy, and ready to rock it, and that's not a given as well.
But now that I'm learning that being in her 30s is an advantage for a woman, she's only 32 too. Plus, I'm rooting for her. Her maiden name is Johnson, according to Telestopja. I did not know that. She's probably a relative. So, one of the many powerful Johnsons. But, Weldon, you had some other races you wanted us to talk about. But let's talk about, since we're on road racing, let's talk about the other big development last week from the roads. Eliud Kipchoge will not be doing a fall marathon major. He will be going sub 2 yet again. I'm not going to lie. I'm not happy about this. John reminded me that I wasn't happy about it the first time, but I'm very unhappy about it this time. I'm tired of sub 2. I feel like it's a gimmick. I want him to fail.
Well, this one's called the Ineos sub 2.
Ineos 159 Challenge is actually the name of the event.
So I think it's cool, that he went out and got a huge sponsor. They're a big sponsor of a cycling team. I'm glad there's some money coming into the sport, but haven't we already seen this? And we sort of were against the first event because they're just trying to break 2 and not follow the rules. But if you watch the Nike Breaking 2, you couldn't help but be inspired. It ended up being pretty cool, but I could find a downhill marathon tomorrow and get someone sub 2. I mean, it wouldn't be as easy as I'm saying it is, but you could do it on a downhill course somewhere. But what do you want him to do in the fall? I mean, I guess maybe go run in New York or something like that. He's go back to Berlin and he did run a 2:01:30 in Berlin. So you're 90 seconds away, but you still got to improve 3 or 4 seconds. And so I think now, if you control everything else, that's how you get the 90 seconds. But didn't we just do that a couple years ago?
Yeah, I think it's good that he's taking another shot at sub 2. And I'll admit, when Breaking 2, when the news was announced about that, I was pissed off. I thought it was going to be stupid. I thought it was just some marketing gimmick. I didn't think he had a prayer at breaking 2 hours. And watching the event, I changed my mind after it. I thought it was well done. I thought 2 hours 25 was closer than I ever thought he was going to come. It was crazy. So I actually didn't think the Breaking 2 thing ended up being bad. I thought it was good. And I think, to me, I mean, look, what's he going to do? Is he going to go back to Berlin? Who cares? He's not going to, I'm sorry, he has to lower his time on a record eligible course by 100 seconds. He already ran pretty well. He ran very, very well last year, obviously, to break the world record. But they had good conditions. I guess the pacing could have been a bit better, but you can't have people for him to draft off of at that pace and have it record eligible. I just don't think he's ever going to run sub 2 legally under IAF conditions, but I do think if he breaks sub 2 in a race like this Ineos challenge where he has paces and people and he's following people, the general public is just going to see sub 2 hour marathon broken. They're not going to care if he doesn't do it. People were still inspired by 2 hours 25 at breaking 5. And Kipchoge has said repeatedly, he runs to inspire people. That's what motivates him in his career. He's already got the world records. He's won London 4 times. He's not running out there for the money, though I'm sure that he's being compensated nicely for this attempt. He's running to inspire people. And I think if he runs 159 and shows other people who are closed-minded that that they think it's not going to happen and he does it, that to him is inspirational. That to him is a big accomplishment. I think it's one of the few achievements left for him in the sport is sub 2, no matter how it's achieved. That and a second Olympic gold medal, I guess win all the majors as well. So it would have been cool to see him run New York, but break 2 hours, no matter how it's achieved, that is really the big white whale that's left for him and for everyone in the marathon. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
This is not right. We're going to have to hear about this for years. The sub 2. Well, I guess if he broke it, it would be all right. Then I wouldn't have to hear about it for the next 30 freaking years. First of all, if he does do this, I hope they just get rid of the pacers jumping in and out. That is so stupid. Have him run behind a car, the triangle thing blocking the wind right behind him. Last time we were debating how much of it was the shoes, how much of it was the car, how much was the pacers. Get rid of all that crap. Put a car in front of him and maybe let him do it. But I'm serious about this. We're gonna hear every marathon has to be fast. Why? I want to see him win a race without a rabbit. He's only done it once in his career. Go to New York, win that. I don't need to see sub 2 exhibition. I don't like it. And now, again, I hope he fails, and I'm maybe even rooting against him in the Olympics now, which is crazy because it's just, I don't know. I understand that he wants the motivation, but I don't know. We're not going to know how much of it is the shoes, how much of it is this, how much of it is that. I don't know. It's just not satisfying to me.
Yeah, John, would you have a problem if he ran it right behind a car? The sub 2 event was cool, but okay, if we're really trying to block the wind and we want a sub 2, should we just put him behind a bus, an electric bus that won't have emissions, and he just runs right behind that, and that blocks the wind more so than the Pacers? How much of a downhill course can we go for, or point to point with a wind behind it? I mean, where do we draw the line? I think if you found the proper downhill course off a mountain, you could probably get a sub 2 much easier.
Yes, and there was a thread about this. When I first heard about this, I said, I'm going to sponsor somebody to break it first. The problem is you really need a huge downhill. To get like a 2.8 marathoner to do it, well, then I think we figured out the math. Maybe I'll write an article. I think you need about a 3,000-foot downhill to do it, to knock off about 8 minutes, which is a lot because then you're starting the beginning of the race at altitude. But there was a thread on Let's Run. John, do you remember seeing this, Weldon? It was this week. I was reading about it. Someone knows a place where it would be that far downhill. I say that we get on Kickstarter. We say we're going to raise $250,000 and we get everybody to donate. I'll donate $1,000 and we put on our own event. I think we can do it first, and then we take the stigma away from this, and he'll have no reason but to go to New York.
Yes, this is a foolproof plan. Let's find a 208 marathoner who would like to sacrifice their knee joints because they're running straight downhill for the entire marathon, just so they can stick it to the most beloved marathoner of all time. I'm sure that this plan will work out flawlessly.
I'm going to find a 205 marathoner. John, you're an idiot. They're not sticking it to the marathoner. A 205 guy's doing it to make $250,000. When your average annual salary over there is $600 a year, $250,000 goes a long freaking way, John.
And John, sponsor plug, the Carbon X shoes. It's supposed to be sort of more of an everyman sort of, I don't know, 4%er, cheater shoe or something. But it's a little more durable, so their knees would not be shot. Maybe Hoka would sponsor this thing.
Wow.
Their knees wouldn't be shot by running 3,000 feet downhill, straight downhill for 26 miles. Sorry, there's no shoe.
That's why you need a gradual.
They're designed for ultra marathons. These shoes are designed to last.
They're not designed to run downhill for 26 miles straight. Also, Robert, you said I don't get it with all these fast marathons. What's up with all these fast? So you'd rather just see Kipchoge show up in New York and run 2:10? Come on, man. If he's running New York, I want to see him go after Mutai's course record. I don't want to see him going out there and just picking it up and then dropping a 4:25 in mile 26.
I'm tired of the same of everything. I'm tired of him running rapid race after rapid race. So if New York wants to put in rabbits, I've been urging New York to put in rabbits at least once every 4 years. When I'm anointed the commissioner of the sport, I will have innovative ideas. We will run New York rabbits 1 year, Boston rabbits the next year. It'll rotate so that maybe like once every 4 years you get it in New York. But so if he wants to do that in New York, that would be fine. But no, I don't want to have 2:10 against the watered down New York field that we often get. If it's a stacked field and he wins it in a tactical race, that would be fine. Yeah, I would rather see him go for the course record. That would be amazing. Good point, John.
Yeah, thank you. He doesn't need rabbits, Robert. If Kipchoge wants to run 2:04 in New York, he's just going to take it out in 62, and they can follow with him or they can't. But we've shown time and again, Kipchoge is faster without rabbits. His world record in his London course marathon, he picked it up once the rabbits dropped off. Maybe they did help a little bit in the first half, but if he wants to run 2:04 in New York, he's just going to take it out hard and do it.
Speaking of Kipchoge, let's turn to the email of the week. It is about Eliud Kipchoge. All right, here we go. First off, I love the podcast. I preach it to all my runner friends, although almost none of them are nerdy enough to appreciate it like me. First of all, that's fake news. The podcast is internationally famous. I feel like a broken record on social media lately, but there is a crazy double standard with Kipchoge versus Mo lately. In the most recent podcast, you mentioned some Kenyan American saying he thinks Kipchoge's group is clean. Within 3 minutes, you were talking about Cyrus Rucho and Kiptum failing the ABP. Cyrus Rucho is, and this is in bold, all caps, coached by Patrick Sang. Why is no one bringing this up? This is at least as outrageous as Mo's association with Auden. In my opinion, it's worse. If Amy Craig gets busted, don't you think Jerry and Shalane would have some questions to answer if they were racing at a major 1 week later? No one has to accuse Kipchoge of cheating, but this fact is at least worth mentioning on your podcast. Rant over. Thanks for everything, you guys. Tyler M.
Yeah, it's fair to mention that Cyrus Ruto, he is coached by Patrick Sang. He lives in Kaptagat. He does not live in Kipchoge's training camp. They do very little training together because Ruto is a 5,000 meter runner. He was busted for the athlete biological passport violation, and Kipchoge is a marathoner, so they don't overlap in training too much. But they do share a coach. I asked, when I was in London, I asked Patrick Sang about this, if he had anything he wanted to talk about. I asked him about Cyrus Ruto, if he was worried for his reputation, and Sang said essentially no comment. He just said, I'm here to talk about the London Marathon. I don't have enough information about this case to comment on it, so he chose not to. I didn't ask Kipchoge about it, but Ruto also is worth noting. He just, for what it's worth, he says he didn't do it. He denies the ABP violation.
Right, but let's change the names. Alberto Salazar and Sifan Hassan test positive. You think we're just going to be going, oh yeah, she doesn't train with Galen Rupp? I mean, the guy has a point. And fine, maybe Sifan Hassan's too big of a name. So you take one of the lesser guys in the NLP who doesn't train with Rupp and they test positive. People be freaking out.
That's fair. Absolutely.
Well, yes, but there's also been allegations about the Nike Oregon project from several ex-team members. So it's a little bit different. There's never been any allegations about Kipchoge's group. But yes, people would be totally freaking out. You're correct about that.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's a fair point to bring up. It should be noted. We are noting it right now.
One thing that was interesting about the Oregon project, and again, someone needs to remind us next time we bump into Kara or Adam, is that's the argument we need to have. So there are your allegations was that the group was doped, but you weren't doped, or maybe they secretly doped you and you didn't realize it. Like, they're not saying everybody was doped. I think they're saying like some of the members are doped, but not me. Just because you're in the group doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's in the group is doped. But again, once it becomes more than one person, once one ROSA athlete tested positive, okay, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. When it's 2, 3, 4, then you're more worried about it. It's like Martin Fagan. He was coached by Ray Tracy in college. Post-college, he does EPO. So should I blame Ray Tracy for it? Can I assume he was doped in college? I don't know.
All right, guys, let's also turn to the deleted thread of the week. I'm going in there now, sort of scrolling down the threads. We have a couple contenders. What will all the Jimmy haters do when he spanks Rupp at the trials and goes sub 2:11:30?
Jim Walmsley spanking Galen Rupp? Is this?
Yeah, but why should that?
What drugs was this person on when they posted this thread?
I don't know why. Malmo, stop deleting threads like that. Jim Walmsley is very popular in Let's Run. We could talk about that. I was, Hoka sponsoring us. I went out to that race this weekend. I'd never been to an ultra. He broke the 50-mile record. But I don't get why someone would delete this thread. Like, sure, the guy's sort of trolling a bit, but Walmsley says big things. He's talking about trying to go 2:11:30. Even at this 50-mile run, he got the record, but he's trying to crush 6 hours. So a lot of times, same thing at Western States. He said his first time ever, I'm going to smash the world record, the course record. And he runs off course and passes out. And I talked to his coach, Julie Hinner, from college. She was doing the broadcast, and she's like, have you seen the video? And I was like, no. He's like, you almost don't want to watch it. Like, he's so sort of out of it. So that thread should stay up. Let me keep going down here.
Well, then, FYI, who coaches Jim Walmsley? Is he self-coached now?
Oh, John, I'm not the true journalist, John. I'm just a hack.
I thought you were the world's foremost ultra running expert. That's what I was told.
I am. Or some people just say I'm a Hoka hack now. I need to find that out. Jim Walmsley actually will be on the podcast next week in the Hoka sponsored segment. I have agreed to that. So I think you guys will have a lot of questions with that. And I feel like Jim, there was one thing that Mike McManus, the sports marketing guy at Hoka, said, and Mike was on our podcast last week. And my apologies for the audio on my side. It was terrible. I was on my phone and I don't know what happened, but you could hear Mike very clearly. But Mike said Jim's very polarizing. And I feel like Jim's very popular on Let's Run. I feel like he's the most popular ultra marathon runner. And I feel like that's because a lot of people with a traditional marathon background on Let's Run, I feel like they feel like people go to the ultra because they can't hack it at shorter distances. Whereas I think they all view Jim as this guy can hack it at shorter distances if he wanted to.
Well, then, did Jim himself essentially say he went to the ultra because he couldn't hack it at short distances? Essentially, like when he was asked, can I do the steeplechase? Or I think this was on the broadcast. Maybe you told me about it. Julie Benson was trying to convert him to the steeplechase, and he's like, look, I can't be one of the best in the country in the steeplechase, but I can be one of the best in the country or the best in the country in the ultramarathon. No, that's not to say he can't hack it. He was good as these other distances, but he wouldn't be the best. And so isn't the whole reason he said he moved to the ultra so that he can be the best?
Yes, so he can be the very best.
Right.
It was interesting. Yeah, I think I told you that. I was asking because I didn't realize Julie coached him, and I was like, well, tell me about him in college. And she said he would just keep pushing it. He wouldn't listen to me. One summer, I said, fine, just do your own thing. And he came back, and she's like, if they had NCAA cross that weekend, he would have been, I think she said, top 20. And by the time NCAA cross ran around, I don't think he made it that year. And she's like, I told him, like, look, man, you can be an 820 steepler. And he's like, well, why would I want to be that? I'm not going to win anything of an 820 steepler. And she's like, well, you might sneak on an Olympic team. But even just the way he talked about the marathon trials, he's like, with the current qualifying, the marathon would actually be, trials would be his first marathon. And he's like, well, unless I think I can run 2:11:30 on that course, why would I do it? And I was like, wow, he's just wired to try to like take on things that other people wouldn't take on. Not that other guys can't run 2:11:30, but there's no other ultra guy in the world thinking, I'm going to go run 2:11:30 on the Atlanta tough hilly course. But his mind's like, I shouldn't even do it unless I can do that. So once again, a reminder that USATF and IAAF still haven't figured anything out about the Olympic trials. It's going to be a disaster in the mid-side unless they get the rules changed.
I don't think it's that crazy. He basically is like, why would I waste my time in the Olympic trials unless I have a chance to make the Olympics? He's got other things he can do. He can make money.
We don't know if he has to run 2:11:30 or not. That's sort of Weldon's point. Is USATF, I did reach out to them last week to see if they had clarified the Olympic qualifying system. So far, no clarification from them on that. So still waiting.
I thought you were supposed to get something by yesterday. They were hoping to get back to you yesterday, but they didn't.
They were hoping to get back because the PR staffer I talked to, Susan Hazard, was heading off to Japan for the World Relays, but she left and didn't get something back to me before she left. So,
by the way, the World Relays are this weekend, folks. If you want to watch, they'll be on live. My play-by-play partner at the Ivy Leagues, Bill Spalding, is going big time, leaving me behind, not taking me. He will be doing the play-by-play for the World Relays with Otto Bolden, but there are no distance relays this year, so you haven't heard much about it in Let's Run. No DMR. Ivy, the IAAF has killed off the 5,000, 10,000, and now the DMR. And 4x8s.
Yes, surprisingly, you would say they killed off the 4x8s because the USA was dominating too much. That's pretty crazy.
But also, this sort of shows, like the IAAF said, we're not hurting Kenyan athletes with the Diamond League changes. This hurt Kenyan athletes, and it'll be an interesting question, sort of where does distance running sort of end up in the sport? Continuing with deleted threads of the week, and I think this actually shows maybe why the other thread got deleted. Some people complain about one thread, and they don't see the full picture of threads. There's also a thread, Walmsley versus NBA's best in a one-on-one. Can Walmsley refocus on multi-sports and become the world's greatest athlete? And also this one, Walmsley versus bowling in the 500. Bowling's a high school kid.
White Lightning,
998. So, and then also Walmsley caught doping after the race, and Let's Run loves Walmsley. So I guess Malmo decided, okay, there's too many of these, we have to delete them. Should we restore one? I think
if people want to talk about Jim Walmsley, let them talk about Jim Walmsley. We don't have.
Malmo likes to have one thread about per subject. By the way, Weldon, your microphone is a little off again. Please speak into it.
Like we've had like 10 threads on Galen Rupp at a time, and we don't delete all of them. I don't understand why we wouldn't let people have different threads about one athlete. Also, speaking of Galen, as we're recording it today, May 8th, 2019, is Galen Rupp's birthday. Happy birthday, Galen. 33 years old today.
And as usual, I will give my Alberto Salazar praise of the week. When I was talking about Amos being in the Oregon Track Club, I really brought that up because I thought to myself, why would anyone be in the Oregon Track Club? Why wouldn't he train with Salazar? So, Nigel, if you're listening, drive up the road and train with Brazier.
That's your weekly Galen Rupp, Alberto Salazar segment brought to you by...
Now it's gone positive. Now I've gone all positive. Guys, I do have some college stuff I'd like to talk about briefly.
Also, Reddit slams Let's Run, calls the board toxic. That's a perfectly fine thread, I think.
Oh, Weldon's still going on the deleted threads, okay.
Yes.
So do we have a winner?
I don't know. Which one do you got? I think we should restore one of these.
I like Walmsley one-on-one versus NBA. That just had the best title.
You know, well, you do have the power to make it so that he can't delete it. You can push a button on there and delete it.
Yes, I do. All right, I will definitely restore the Walmsley NBA.
You should restore them all and merge them into one, and then he would basically. Maybe we should make. Does Malmo listen to these podcasts? Like, I've wanted to replace him for like 7 years, but I'm scared of Malmo because he's a volunteer moderator. So, if we make his life so miserable and undo all his work, maybe he'll just quit.
He actually listens because one time we called him Grumpy on the podcast, and then we got an email about Grumpy Malmo. So, you've been exposed. Hopefully he's not listening this far into the podcast.
That's true.
All right, Robert, college track. Hit me.
Okay.
What do you got?
I have two things. Performance of the week. This is amazing to me. If I say the name, Weldon will have no idea. John, please be quiet. I'll ask Weldon. Who is Ryan Smeaton?
What was the name? Your microphone broke up again.
Ryan Smeaton.
Spell that?
I think it's the way it's pasted in my document. Smeeton.
So I can Google it?
Well, if you Google it, you'll find out who he is.
Then you'll find out who he is.
He's a murals and painting artist in Canada.
Oh, maybe he is Canadian. I didn't know he was an artist. He's the new NCAA leader in the steeplechase. Dave Smith, Oklahoma State, for Dave Smith, Oklahoma State Cowboys. He ran 8:27.90 at Stanford, which is pretty good. I mean, if you're sub 8:30, you're often leading the NCAA in the steeple. But what amazes me about him is this guy indoors ran like 2:28 for the 1,000, 4:07 for the mile, 8:09 for the flat 3,000. So the gap between his 3,000 PR and his steeple is 18 seconds. Give me a break. Last year, his steeple PR was 8:54. So I don't see anything about him, like when I look at him, this is like total stud. All of a sudden, he's running 8:27 in the steeple. Like Dave finds these random guys. Like, remember that guy? Who was the guy that was dunking the basketball and stuff?
Josh Thompson.
Yeah, sick.
JUCO turned him into sub 4.
I mean, his personal best, 155, 229, 353, 812. And now he's running 8:27 steeple.
Well, he's only 20 years old, Robert. People do tend to improve in college. Dave Smith is a good coach. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to ask Dave why exactly this guy's improved, but this is about the sort of time, if you really have a lot of talent, that you start to show it.
As a former college coach for 10 years, our life revolved around one thing, winning the conference meet. So I was looking at some conference meet results. What do you think the guys, and also sort of how some of these conferences, one of the things we liked about the Ivy League is all the teams are into it. And some of these conferences, some of the teams are really bad, and some of them are really good. So, Jonathan, this is the annual segment where we make you look like a genius or a fool. Guess the most number of points that was scored in a conference meet by a team last week.
Wait, how many conference meets were there?
There were only a handful. I mean, there weren't like a million. There was like it's a lot of the smaller conferences. Like,
got to be over 200. Since you're asking, I'm assuming it's going to be a lot.
Some conferences score, 10-8-6. Ivy League scores 10-8-6, 4-2-1, which is 31 points per event. Some conferences have almost 33% more. They have 39 points event if you score 8 deep. All
right. Since you're asking, I'm guessing it's going to be quite high. So I'm going to say 224.
Not even close. Weldon?
John said 224? So I have to go higher, 278.
Okay, and give me your lowest point totals.
For any team or for a winning team?
No, any team.
I mean, 0. Surely some school scored 0.
I'm going to go with it might have been some zeros.
I'm not sure if there was 0. I need to go through to find a 0, but okay. The Monmouth University men scored 339 points.
What the hell? 300?
Win the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. And it wasn't even that's almost 50% of the conference points, I think.
That's absurd.
Well, I don't know. There's 22 events, right? Or 20. How many events?
What was second place? 339? Oh my God.
It wasn't even half the events. There's over 800 points. And this is a conference with Iona in it.
Congratulations, Monmouth. I've never seen a track meet. I've never seen a track meet score remotely close to that. Maybe it's because I haven't passed results enough, but that just sounds ludicrously high. I should do the math per event. I think it's they're averaging about 15 points per event. So second place was Ryder with 152. Iona 116. Manhattan 103. So there's still 4. Wait, okay. How many events are in this conference meet then? There was 4 teams over 100 points. Second place
with 39 points, John. There's a lot more points. 1, 2.
So they go 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
21 events, I believe. Yeah. So there's 819 points. So, anyways, that's a lot. Now the lowest that I could find, there might have been some zeros, but a shout out to the Colgate University women. They scored 1 point at the Patriot League. Now, again, this is a conference that only has 10 teams in the women's. It has 10 teams in the women's conference. They score 8 deep. So you think that you would almost certainly score in a relay, particularly American University doesn't enter a lot of the relays. But their only point came in the 4x100 relay where they finished in 51.25 seconds. They were more than 5 seconds back of the winning team. But one team was disqualified for an exchange violation, and they were elevated up to the single point. So
1 point is better than 0 points. That's all I have to say.
That's pretty crazy about Colgate. I mean, do they even really have a team? But all right, guys, we have Stephanie Bruce coming up next. Do you just want to go straight there? You guys can ask me some questions, or I have a new revenue opportunity in the audio of the week, but we could save that to next week. What do you guys want to do?
Well, I'm kind of fascinated by the ultra scene. Like, is it appealing? Well, because there's a lot more unknowns. Like, Walmsley can really slow down at the end, and he's struggling. Like, do you think that there will be more intrigue as to who the winner is of these races?
Yeah, for me there was. So, I mean, there's only 8 people in the entire race, so that's very different, right? There was 2 people in the women's race and only 1 finished. So Sabrina Little, your only finisher and winner of the women's race. So someone on Let's Run could be like, oh, this shit's not competitive. But the men's race, so you had pretty good storylines. Like, you have Walmsley saying, like, I'm going to break 6 hours. Then you have Tyler Andrews, who also is an advertiser on Let'sRun.com for his Strive trips. If you want to go to Peru or Kenya and train, check out Google Strive trips running. High school kids, adults, everyone can do it. But Tyler Andrews is like, hey, I'm moving up to this ultra stuff. I'm going to try to break the records as well. And Tyler's a pretty good marathoner. And you just don't know. Like, anyone can run the pace for a marathon. It's like that part isn't that hard. So Tyler's ahead of them. Then you've got the 100K world champion, Hideaki Yamauchi. I can't say. Yamauchi. And he's in the race as well, saying he's going to go out slower. And so then Walmsley's ahead and just like crushing it and really starts picking it up on the flats, running 5:30 pace. And he only needs to run 5:45 pace. He's actually look at the splits here and they're running some in 5:20s. And then all of a sudden the pace slows to like 5:45. And I tweeted out, like, is he done? And these guys there are trying to tell me, like, oh, no, he can hold on. And I'm thinking, like, he's in a shitload of trouble. And I kind of was right. He held on. He got the 50-mile record. And then right when he gets there, he starts jogging. And then he's walking and sitting on the bench. So it took everything he could to get the 50-mile record.
Now, are you in a media truck? Like, how are you following this?
No. So they, won at 62 miles, right? So, I mean, everything they had was totally first class, full disclosure. They paid for my trip. You go on buses out to the start out in Folsom, which is about 20 miles from the finish. Then we get in a bus and we go to maybe 9 miles, get out, watch them run by, keep going down. But, I mean, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this broadcast. It was like the crew that does the Red Bull events. They had lead trucks with both races and a drone flying on overhead. So for me to follow it, I would just stream it on my phone or in the car. And then we go to the finish area and they do 9 4.7-mile loops. So there you stay there and you see them every, 25, 30 minutes, something like that. So then I would just watch on most ultras, that's the thing. You can't watch them. I assume Comrades is on TV, but most of them, you just sort of are getting updates and splits. This, you could actually watch the whole thing. And Tony Revis is doing full broadcast on for 6 hours.
So my other question was, why didn't they just run the loop over and over and over? Why did they run the other part first?
Probably because maybe the other part is downhill a bit. I'm not sure about that. 150 feet downhill, which if you do the math, actually should make that much difference. That should make, I think, John Kellogg would say 30 seconds. And it's not, the course wasn't perfectly flat, but it doesn't hurt to have a downhill part. But then Jim and them held back on that part, and the Japanese guy went out harder. So I'm thinking probably they wanted everything possible to do that. But if you're going to do that, then I would start the race at 3 a.m. I feel like if they started the race at 3 a.m, then you could have seen if Jim could have broken 6 hours. But it was so hot. Like, I couldn't believe the official temperature was only 70 something at the end because.
Yeah, I mean, Monza started in the dark. I think it'd be hard to film, obviously, if it was in the dark. But can we give a shout out? People always talking about soft Americans, and I want to go there. There's threads on Let's Run like, why do you have to be a full-time pro? What do you do all day with your time? This Japanese dude has won 2 world championships at 100K, and he's got a full-time freaking job. Why do these Americans, lazy millennials, sit on their butt all day and just run around for a few hours?
This guy only runs 60 miles a week. Somehow he's an ultramarathon star, and he told Weldon he runs 60 miles a week. If you only had to run 60 miles a week to be a top pro runner in the U.S., I think more people would do it.
I mean, that was crazy because I was like, how much do you run? And she says the translator said 100 kilometers a week. And I was like, what? I'm like, no, how much do you run? And it's 60 miles a week. And then she sort of says, oh, maybe 125. And she's like, I'm like, are you sure? And she says, yeah, maybe 500 kilometers a month. And I was just like, holy crap, how can he be the best 100K ultramarathoner in the world? And I think that sort of begs the question. People are specialized at certain stuff, and detractors would say, hey, well, this stuff isn't that competitive, but this guy can do that.
No, it confirms my belief that the Japanese are really good at going a long distance at like 2:10 pace.
Yeah, I mean, like this guy, Hideaki Yamauchi, he's made to run the 100K. He's very good at it. And even here, he said he's going to go out at 6:20 pace, 6 hours and 20 minutes.
Are there any records we can break? Well, why don't you just pick one up and try to break like...
Yeah, that's what I used to think. Robert, you were the ultramarathoner of the group. You could have done it.
I've done a 30-mile run in practice.
I mean, hell, the article's got 1,000 Facebook likes.
I'm not convinced Robert could run 30 miles at any pace right now. So I think just finishing that distance would be a massive achievement for him.
By the way, well, we got to correct for the record. Colgate does have a big team. I see in the photos on their website. When I was coaching at Cornell, I remember talking to it. It was a different head coach, but they were telling me like they don't get like any admissions support. So it's really hard to have a good team if you aren't recruiting.
All right, guys, we got to start getting these podcasts shorter because we're way over an hour in, and we've got an hour pretty much next with Stephanie Bruce, the USATF half marathon champion, in our Hoka sponsored segment. When Hoka said, hey, you guys want to talk about ultras for a month? We're like, sure, great. And they're like, do what you want. We're like, okay, we'll have a Hoka athlete on the podcast each week for 5 minutes. But, she won the USA half champs, and I've always wanted to talk to her. So 1 hour with her. We're going to have Jim Walmsley next week. So, Robert, you can get all your ultra questions out then and say that you could actually beat him even though you're a fat ass and slow. Robert versus Walmsley 101, one-on-one basketball. I think that's the big question.
I'm still taking Walmsley every day.
He's very tall. So, yeah, I'm taking Walmsley in everything. And he has Air Force training. So, yeah, no chance for Robert. All right. Till next week, everyone listen to USATF half marathon champ Stephanie Bruce. She's got a cool story. Talks about how this part isn't cool, but the death of her father really helped inspire her and make her go from a mediocre high school runner, or pretty good high school runner, to a fabulous runner that she is now. And the resurgence of her career, or continued emergence of her career after the birth of her two kids, getting her first national championship last year at 34 and her second this past weekend in Pittsburgh at the age of 35 with a PR in the half marathon. Stephanie Bruce, next. All right, we're joined by Stephanie Bruce, the newly minted USATF half marathon champion in Pittsburgh this past weekend. Her second national championship in the last year. Both those coming at, were you 33 last year? You're 34 now.
I'm 35.
35. Ooh, wow. I mean, that's pretty amazing. First national championship at 34 at the 10K at the Peachtree 10K last year, and number 2 this weekend in a PR in Hilly, Pittsburgh, 1:10:44 over Sarah Hall and Emma Bates. First of all, welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
And congratulations.
Thank you again.
You've had quite the career, and we're gonna touch on that. Like, you came through way back in the day. I was living in Flagstaff. You came through my apartment, so you're officially the one runner I can root for. If you stayed in my apartment or been in my apartment, like, I feel like that predates being a journalist. So you're the number one runner in the hearts of Let's Run. But
let's clarify. Like, I didn't come to your apartment like to date you.
No, exactly.
I came to your apartment because my teammates knew you, and you happened to be living in Flagstaff.
Yes. Let's get that clear. Dave Monaco, founder of Bring Back the Mile, was out in Flagstaff for the summer, and some of his teammates came through, and I had no idea, seriously, like 10 years later. I think it wasn't until World Cross in Uganda that I put 2 and 2 together that you had been through there. But now, of course, I take credit for fostering a little something with your running career. But no, it's pretty amazing, like how far I think you've come since then, and really even since the birth of your 2 kids, Riley and Hudson. Who's older?
Riley's older.
So, I'm not sure where I want to start. First, no, let's go back to this weekend. I mean, what's it like to be You won by 20 seconds. What's it like to be coming down? You're winning a national title. I mean, how does that feel? Like, people dream of that day.
Yeah, I mean, I get goosebumps like trying to relive it and replay it. But it was very much like Petrie. Like, it just feels like, is this really happening to me right now? Like, it doesn't feel real. And maybe that's because like winning national titles are new to me. You know, someone like Molly Huddle, who's won 28, she's probably like, oh yeah, here it is again. But for me, like, it just feels like this short 5 to 6 seconds where everything, like a movie montage of your whole life, is just like playing in your head. And you're like, gosh, there's so many things you want to say. There's so many emotions you're feeling, but you don't have enough time because the finish line is coming. And it's literally what you train and you dream for. And then it just happens like that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're appreciating it. And I hope Molly doesn't take them for granted, because the rest of us dream of winning a national title, and it's pretty cool. I mean, when you won in Peachtree, like, at this point in your career, were you thinking, I'm never going to win one of these?
I did. I definitely had that. It was like my storyline was, you get second and you get third. You get outkicked all the time, and you're never going to win, because I felt like I was getting better in my career, but everyone else was getting so much better at the same time or at a quicker rate than me. So I really didn't know like if I was going to win at the age of 34. I thought maybe the best years were behind me, or that people, like I said, were just better than me at that point. But that kind of showed that I was wrong, and you can change your narrative at any point in your life, in your career.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I remember when Paula Radcliffe was regarded as the girl who got second and third and got outkicked at the end of races. So people can definitely change their narrative. I mean, it's pretty amazing. 5K PR this year as well.
Yeah, and it's funny to look back. Like, I obviously know that time wasn't that good. I ran 15:44, but the cool part was like, I didn't really care that it wasn't that great of a result. For me, it was just affirmation that I was moving forward and having progress in my own like training and racing. And I think if I jumped on the track right now, I could probably run 15:20 pretty easily. So that shows me that I was just moving in the right direction. I just happen to race sometimes when I'm not quite in my tip-top form.
Oh, 15:20. I mean, it'd be 25 seconds ahead of your best. I think that just sort of shows how far you've come as an athlete, how confident you are. It seems like everything is going very well with the whole Hoka NAZ Elite group. You guys seem to be firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Do you have more people to train with now? I mean, how or is it just you can thrive off what the men are doing as well? What is it? I mean, the women are running, everybody's running well, but like, I don't know, is it a tight-knit team, or is it more like what the women are doing except for what the men are doing? How would you say that dynamic is?
Yeah, I think the dynamic, it's very tight-knit. I mean, it's one of those, like, each time someone on the team runs something, everyone else like gathers confidence, because they're like, I'm doing the same training, and I don't even know how far to go back. But if you go back to 2016, we had 2 fourth place finishes at the Olympic trials. Scott Fauble was 4th in the 10K. Kellen Taylor was 4th in the 10K. And then at the marathon trials, Kellen was 6th. Matt Yano was 6th. Scott Smith was, I think he was 13th or 14th. Yeah. And then once Coach Ben, like, kind of feel like he figured out the marathon cycle and what to do, everyone just started like nailing it, with the 2 Scotts running 2:12 last year at Frankfurt. And then, of course, this year, Scott getting 7th at Boston and running 2:09. And then Kellen ran 2:24 at Grandma's. And then Alfine runs 2:26. I'm like, I'm going to get kicked off the team soon if I don't run 2:26 or better, because that's what my training partners do on a bad day now. So yeah, I think it's just very exciting to all be on the same page. And we have all these younger kids that have just joined the group, like our British athlete, Alice Wright. She just ran 31:56 in the 10,000. And my husband, like at the age of 36, runs 28:47 or whatever in the 10K. So I think it just shows like we're just trying to put our names in the hat and be contenders. So it's very exciting to be part of.
I'm glad you're talking to me. I hope Ben's not upset. He didn't quite make the Let's Run squad for the World Cross Country team.
No, that's okay. It was a last minute shot.
Wow, I didn't look at the results. 28-48 this weekend.
Yeah, that's solid. It's really
That is
good.
solid.
I know, especially because he has been pacing the women. So, if you think about it, like he really didn't have a lot of training, but I think just all the years in accumulation, like he just believes in his strength, and he's definitely not done yet. He's still holding his own, which is very exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. And I guess the one thing that he has that you haven't done in running, I guess would say make a world's team.
World track team, correct. He still got that over me.
Is that a goal for the summer? Let's talk about the rest of this year first, and then we kind of go back and look at your career, because I think people will get a lot from just learning, how far you've come, how you've persevered. I think there's a lot that people can learn from this, because I don't know, even though we know success doesn't come instantaneously in running, we still want it that way, or we think there's some secret to success. I assume you would say that that's not the case, and you sort of figure it out along the way, and it's a building process. But what are the goals for the rest of the summer? And I assume everything kind of points to Olympic marathon trials and maybe track trials next year.
Yeah, so I am running the US 10K Championships at the New York Mini the beginning of June, and trying to go defend my title back there. And then I will be running the 10,000 in Des Moines at USA's. And I think after last year taking third there, I'm trying to turn myself into a 10K runner. And I think I have gotten to the point where I don't have to run a track season to feel confident that I can run a track race. And before this year started, we kind of set out what's 2019 all about. And it's really about trying to make teams, trying to learn how to win races, and just putting myself in position to get ready for 2020. And so every race I run, I have that in the back of my mind, winning, making teams. And so I will very much trying to make that team this summer on the track in the 10,000. And then I will be running a fall marathon to be determined.
In terms of the fall marathon, is the thinking there to get, do you have the time standard? What is the women's time standard yet?
It's 2:29:30. I don't have it because it only opened this year.
Yeah, that's right. So is that the thinking there, just to make sure you get that out of the way? assuming the trials are going to be faster than that, but you never know with the weather, and that course is not easy. Or did you just want to get in a marathon before the trials regardless?
I mean, it's a few things. It's, you can get the standard by running the time and by being top 10 at a major. So those will be the two aims. And I wanted to get one anyway, because I just love running marathons. And even though everything is all about next February, at this point in my career, like every race I run is just as important. And I don't want to put all my eggs in a basket, because the way the US is, I very much know I could go run 2:24:45 and take fourth place next year in Atlanta. That's just how good America is right now. And so I'm just trying to make sure I make the most of like every time I step on the start line. And so that'll be the intention this fall in whatever marathon I run.
Yeah, and I think you've shown you can race very well when racing frequently. Last year you did, or I guess 2 years ago, you did World Cross in Uganda. And then I think less than a week later, raced the 10K at Stanford. I don't know, like doing stuff like that, is that at this point of your career, you just like racing, you want to get the races in, or do you think it like that helps you perform as an athlete? Or is it like when you're younger in your career, you put too much emphasis on just making sure everything was perfect? And sometimes I feel like that can backfire, right? Like if you're just too focused on one thing, like if all your eggs in one basket, sometimes mentally, whatever, maybe even physically, we don't respond well.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. You can't do too many of those back-to-back races. Like I did that 2 years ago, and then just last year I ran New York, and then I ran CIM a month later, and that worked out great. But I think to have longevity in the sport and not get injuries or burnout, you can't do too many of those back-to-backs. But along the lines of what you said, I do think there's a mental component, and sometimes I just believe when I'm fit, I'm fit. It doesn't matter what race I'm going to run. And I was guilty of it when I was younger. Like before 2012, I had run 2:29, and I think that was like the 7th best time at the in the country going into the trials. And I just tried to like beat all my training leading into the trials, and I tried to be better than I was that last cycle. And I was just so anxious and uptight come to the trials. I probably overtrained, and I was so worried about making the Olympic team. Like I didn't just run my own race, and the trials are the only race I ever dropped out of in my career. And I'm, embarrassed that I put that on such a pedestal, and I should have just treated it like any other marathon. But it's cool that that was the only race I've ever dropped out of. And I think I learned a lot from then till now.
If you make the team in the marathon, it'll be a cool story. It'll be bookends.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because I was looking back trying to see, I'm like, and I was on Telestopsia, the statistics website, and they don't show DNF sometimes. And I was like, I guess she didn't run the marathon trials that year. Maybe she got hurt.
No, I ran.
I saw your track trials results. And I get one thing I would say, sort of, let's kind of transition talking about your career as a whole. But it seems like you're running so well and everything now. But I would say that, I don't know if this is a resurgence since your kids or how you want to describe it. But the one thing that hasn't matched up then is your marathon. I mean, you've gotten 10th at a couple majors since then, but I feel like your marathon time could be much faster. What you're running in 10K and a half marathon, this sort of stuff now. Do you agree with that assessment?
Oh yeah, my marathons have sucked. I mean, like people have tried to say, like, be proud of yourself, and I'm always proud of my effort, but they're so not indicative, and it's definitely been frustrating the last couple of years. But I feel like I know why, and at least I have answers to those questions, so it's not surprising to me. But it's also like you're only as good as you run, so I can't just say I believe this. I just have to go out and do it. And so I'm ready to do that now that I feel like I solved a lot of the puzzle in those marathons.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's sort of one shows the high expectations for you and sort of how far you've come, because you can get 10th or 11th at New York and people are like, oh, that wasn't a very good race for Stephanie. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think back in the day, people would have been like, oh, that's a pretty good race for her.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's go way back. Stephanie Bruce in college. You went to UCSB. Or maybe let's go back high school.
Okay.
How good a runner were you in high school? What were your options when you were going to college? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So, I would say my early high school career, I was not that good. I think my freshman year, I'd run 5:55 in the mile. And honestly, I was just a kid who liked to party and eat fast food, and I didn't show up for practice a lot. Like we lived in Phoenix, and it was super hot, so we had to practice at 6 a.m. And as a 16-year-old, that was just not very appealing to me. So my poor coach, Dave Van Sickle of Xavier College Prep, he really thought I was way better than I was letting on, and he wished I would just show up to practice more because he just saw something in me. But I just wanted to be like a regular teenager in high school. And my mom and dad, they encouraged me as well. And I told them, guys, I'm trying as hard as I can, but honestly, I probably wasn't. And then my senior year, actually, my dad he was diagnosed with prostate cancer about 6 years before that. And his health was like kind of declining my senior year. And he was getting treatment in New York at the Memorial Sloan Kettering. And I decided to go take a visit out there when I was 18. And I went out to visit him. And he was in the city and I was staying on Long Island. And the morning I woke up to go visit him, I went for a run. And then I got back from that run. And my stepmom had called and she's like, Stephanie, your dad actually passed away. And I was like, no, I'm about to go visit him. It was this like surreal moment where I'm like, that's impossible. I'm literally going to see him right now. And he actually died while I was on that run. And as an 18-year-old, something just changed in my life and in my head. And I started to look at running as not a chore or burden, something I had to do. It was something that I get to do, and it kind of became like a gift. And then amazingly, I had run 5:27 in the mile my junior year, and then 3 months after my dad passed away, I ran the state meet and I ran 4:58 in the mile, and I took second place. And it was kind of this huge breakthrough that I just started to go through more pain in races, and I believed that I wasn't going through enough pain. And that's what changed my mentality, really. And then I basically had taken a visit to UC Santa Barbara, and it was before I ran that time. And Coach Pete Dolan was like, "All right, well, 5:27 is pretty good. Keep in touch or whatever." He's just doing that. And then I'm heading to prom after I ran the state meet. I'm in the limo, and I get a phone call. And he's like, "Hey, Stephanie, this is Pete Dolan. I just saw that you ran 4:58." And I'm like, "Oh, you want to talk now?" It was that classic, like I had now run something that got his attention, which obviously is how it goes. And he wanted to offer me a scholarship to come run there. And so I ended up going to UC Santa Barbara for college.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing story. I didn't know the full story about your dad. I mean, it made me almost tear up, but
it tends to get people.
I can see that really resonating. I mean, I can't imagine going through that, but I mean, running is like a gift, right? I mean, I think we've all felt that feeling when we're out there, and I don't know, it can be hard and tough, but it's also like, I don't know, a beautiful, wonderful thing. And yeah, after what your dad had been through,
Mm-hmm.
pushing a little hard in a race, like, yeah, that's kind of easy, right?
It totally is. And I think even as an 18-year-old, like I had so many choices after you go through something traumatic. Like it would have been very easy to go down one path. And I was so lucky I found running because I have a brother who was my best friend. And I think he took my dad's death another way, and he became a drug addict over the last 10 years. And I found running. And so it was just amazing how, like, when people say like running can change lives, it really can if you believe it and you let it. So I'm really thankful that I found it, and it's a part of who I am today.
Was your dad a runner?
He was. It's like I don't remember that much of it, but I do remember him like taking me on some runs and getting me involved. He never like competed, but he was a runner.
And how'd you start running? I guess I usually start with people's high school careers, but I think we all start running before then. Like, did you run before high school? Were you ever drawn to the sport? Like, did you run in PE class as a kid? I mean, what are your earliest memories of running?
Yeah, it was PE classes mainly. We had like the Presidential Fitness Awards where you had the mile shuttle run. And that was really appealing because like I could beat boys. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And so I think it was just the competitive side of me because I grew up with 3 brothers and I wanted to find a way to beat them because they were stronger than me in every other way. But I was the only one that like really ran. And so that was cool to be able to like have that one strong suit. It's like, okay, none of my brothers do baseball and soccer, but Stephanie runs. And so I wasn't really in love with it. Like I think until like I experienced my dad passing away at the end of my high school career.
Yeah, I think a lot of people started with the presidential fitness test. Mm-hmm. My brother and I did. We were kind of competitive with the other kids, and we were all pretty good at the other stuff. And then we would just like kick their butts in the running. We're like, hey, this is kind of fun. And I didn't think no way did I love running then, but I thought I was pretty good at it. And kids like being good at stuff. So I kind of stuck with it and eventually fell in love with it. So you go to college. Now Pete Dolan's recruiting you, which is a good thing. I guess originally you're going for education and maybe to party a bit, but now you're buckling down and running, and you were pretty good in college. But yeah, like what was your top finish? Maybe quickly talk us through your college career.
Yeah, I had kind of a unique college career. When I got there, of course, like every high school kid, I'm like, I'm a miler because I ran 4:58, and I get there and he's like, you're going to run the 10K. And I'm like, you are crazy. But he could just tell with the workouts that I did, like I showed that I was better at longer stuff, and like the speed didn't come that naturally to me. So I slowly started to move up, and I ended up, I think it was my sophomore year, I won the Big West Conference in cross country, kind of an upset. Actually, the favorite stopped and started walking with like 800 to go. And so I just all of a sudden was in second, and then I see her walking and I'm like, okay, I guess now I'm in first. So I guess you could say that was an upset, like gimme win. And so that was the only like cross country conference championship I won.
Still counts.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, I would say I had kind of a middle of the road college career. The only big race I ever won was the Roy Grayak Invitational in Minnesota. So I won that. And then he decided he wanted me to try the 10K my junior year. And this was 2004, 2005, 2006. We went to Stanford for that first meet in March. And at that time, the like auto qualifier for NCAAs was 33:40, if you can believe that. Back then, that was like a really great time. And I went out in my first one and I ran 33:27. And that ended up being the school record. And that showed Pete like, okay, like this girl is going to be a 10K runner. And we were pretty happy with it because back 12 years ago, like 33 mid was really good. And then I ended up making it to NCAAs, and a couple weeks before, I actually started to feel very bad in training, and I was just tired and heavy, and we didn't really understand what was going on. And I took my first blood test, and we found out that I had a ferritin level of 4. And they were like, you are literally a dead person walking because that was like dangerously low. And that made a lot of sense. But, NCAAs was a few weeks away and we didn't really have any time. So I started taking an iron supplement. We tried to just get through whatever training we could. And I thought I started to feel better, and I took another blood test and we got the results, but Pete didn't tell me before the race. He's like, I just want you to just go run. And it was the hardest race I ever had run to date. And I think I was in 10th place with a lap to go. And I just like shut my eyes and I started sprinting, and I ran like a 70-second last lap, and I finished 8th place, which was the last All-American spot. And I ran over to Pete after, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I did it. How is my iron? And he's like, 5.
Oh my God.
It had gone up 1 point. But then when I look back, I was like, oh, I thought I was like good running 33, whatever, 30. That makes so much sense that like, why I think I'm where I'm at now, because I wasn't even like, my potential back then was nothing now that I think of like what my iron and blood levels were, but we just didn't know all that. We weren't like a very high tech school. He didn't even do anything after. He was like, yeah, just keep taking that iron, I guess. We didn't like look into it at all. We were so old school.
I'm reevaluating your college career. Like,
I know.
You've been an NCAA champion. I mean,
no, that's what's funny. Like I look back and I'm like, man, I think my best finish at NCAA cross was 46th place. And that was the year, actually, this was more special. Our team had never made it to nationals. And my freshman year, I said, I want to take this team to nationals. I believe we can put Santa Barbara on the map. We made it for the first time. I think we were 29th place at NCAAs, but by the time I graduated, we took 9th place in 2006. And that was the best Santa Barbara's ever done. And I was so proud to be part of that team, to be 9th in the country. And yeah, I felt like that was more important, like leaving my legacy on Santa Barbara, not just as an individual, but what our team did. And then my last year, I was 5th at NCAAs in the 10K, 2007.
What year did you win Roy Griak?
2000. Gosh, I'm so horrible at this stuff, and Ben would be cringing. I think 2006.
8th at NCAAs with a Ferritin of 5 and running Roy Griak. That sort of, I think, shows the potential to be a pro runner. But okay, so yeah, you graduate, then what? Like bags of cash come your way?
No, because at that time, I know it was really like 5th and 8th were like good, but it wasn't really, nobody was knocking on my door. But Greg McMillan was starting the group in Flagstaff with Adidas. And he said, I've been watching your college career and I really think you could be a great marathoner. But I still was like kind of stubborn, and I'm like, I'm a 10K runner, and I don't think I want to move back to Arizona because I was from there. And so I started to explore some options. I had just met Ben, who is now my husband, but we had just met in 2005 and we had been dating for 2 years. And I'm like, man, I just started dating this guy. I don't know if I want to like leave. So I move up to San Luis Obispo where he was training under Mark Conover. And I tried to figure out what I was going to do. I took a couple of visits and I ultimately got an opportunity to train under Oregon Track Club with Frank Gagliano. And so I moved up to Eugene in the summer of 2007. when everyone goes to Eugene in the summer and they're like, this place is awesome. It's sunny, it's beautiful. And I should have visited in like November. So I get up there and he's like, all right, you're doing 400s in the Cold Teeter. And I was like, what? The Cold Teeter has run 159 and 800.
I forgot Gags coached OTC.
Yeah. So all these people that like, I'm like, what are you talking about? I run the 10,000. Like, how am I going to do this? And it wasn't Gag's fault. He was more a track guy. And I think his limit of coaching was the 5K. And here I was, that was the lowest I was ever going to run. So I told him I don't think it was the right fit for me, but now here I am. I just moved to Eugene. Like, what am I going to do? And I ended up going to the running store, and this guy was working there, and he says, yeah, what have you run in the 10K? And I told him, and I said, I just ran the 10K champs at Tufts in Boston. And he's like, what'd you run there? I said, I ran 33:26 on the roads. And he's like, oh my gosh, you're going to be a marathoner. And I was like, whoa, hold on a sec. And that ended up being Brad Hudson. And so I started working with Brad, and I worked with him for the next 2 years with Dathan Ritzenheim and Jason Hartman. And the three of us were kind of in a training group there together. And
you're connected to like everybody.
I am. Yeah. Yeah. And then Eugene was a really tough time, though. Those next 2 years were really rough. I had glimpses of like hope. I ran the 2008 trials in the 10K, and I was 12th, but I was getting lapped by Karen Shalane and Amy Bagley. And so I was far from having the thought of making an Olympic team, but I still, in the back of my mind, was like, I'm going to make the Olympic team in the marathon one day. I know it. And I just like believed it. And so I kept getting injured and I felt sick. And
Did you run a marathon at this point?
No, I hadn't yet. Then Brad was like, I think we should try one. And he's like, we're just going to train for a few weeks and let's just get the distance in, like not worry about time. And so he had me run Twin Cities, and I went out and I ran 240. I ran splits of like 120.06, 120.01 or something, like pretty dead even. And he was like, okay, like this is your distance. And that was cool because, again, I wasn't firing on all cylinders at that point, but it was kind of just a trial run. But then, yeah.
Are you sponsored by anyone at this point? Are you working? What are you doing?
I am nannying for the Powells that coached at Oregon, for Marisa and Andy Powell. I pretty much helped raise their son, Owen.
Wow, another connection.
Yep. And I babysat for like 5 to 6 hours during the day so I could train in the morning, evening. And then I house cleaned. I cleaned toilets. I helped this lady, like when she was coming back from surgery, I basically was just cleaning her house and doing errands for her. And I don't know, kind of like the bottom of the barrel jobs, but whatever I could do to make myself train during the day. I did that. And then when I would run road races, like I would do well enough that I'd start getting like $1,000 here, $1,200 here. But then after I'd have like a period of training, I'd get injured again. And I was like, this is such a vicious cycle. Like I was unhappy, and Ben had moved up by this time. He joined OTC. His career started to take off. He ran 8:26 under Mark Rowland and then 8:19. But I was very unhappy, and I questioned whether I should keep going. I looked up being a lawyer, being a doctor. I asked whether we should have a baby. Like I was all kinds of crazy at that point. But something inside of me just was like, maybe you should just keep running and try to figure out the answers. So I saw a naturopath, and they said, have you thought about food allergies? And this was like 2009, where food allergies were not really talked about, or no one had really brought them on the scene. And long story short, I ended up taking a test, and they found out I had celiac disease, which is an autoimmune where you're allergic to gluten. And honestly, that was the reason I wasn't having my iron high. I wasn't absorbing anything. And so I had all these issues. I was literally from eating bread and pasta. It sounds so simple, but that was the biggest problem I had. And basically, after I got that diagnosis, I started looking up all the good coaches in the country, and I sent emails and I said, hey, I think I can be one of the best female marathoners. Will you coach me? It was just so bold, but I believed in myself for whatever reason. And I always thought there were things that were just thrown against me that was holding me back. And one got back to me, and it was Greg McMillan, who I had said no to years before. And he said, I still believe in you. Like, let's have you move to Flagstaff. And I moved there in April of 2010. And then 9 months later is when I ran 2:29 in the marathon.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
And that's it.
You'd know, like, what are the symptoms? You just would feel lethargic when running, or like, did you have any idea that you may have had it? I mean,
no, I just felt bad all the time. I woke up feeling hungover without even drinking. I had a headache, like my brain fog. I forgot things. I was like losing weight, even though I felt like I was eating so much. And when I look at pictures, I was like very puffy in my face. And then, the inflammation in my body, I would just have sore hamstrings and all these injuries from not doing that much. A week before USA's, I was running a track workout, and then all of a sudden I had to stop, and I had a broken sacrum like the next day. So there were just all these things that were pointing to something was really off. And my theory is that it is genetic, and usually a parent gives it to you. My theory is my dad had it and we never knew. And when celiac is left untreated, it can lead to cancer because it's the same as like malignant cells in your body. And my theory is he had it and no one ever knew. And then basically it got passed along to me.
Wow. I mean, for a lot of reasons, it's great you figured it out. The running and your health and everything. Okay, so you run the 2:29 for Greg. And then, so that's 2010?
2011, Houston.
Okay. And then what, like, the kids come soon after? Story going.
Yeah, so
my timeline here.
For sure. At that time, we had also launched Picky Bars, which was really cool because that was like something Lauren, Jesse, and I were working on while Lauren and I were injured. And it gave us something to kind of like distract us while we were both injured. And then it was so cool that before I ran Houston, Lauren came back and won the 5K on the track at USA's, like out of nowhere. So it was really cool that like we were getting back to the level that we were at before while we were starting Picky Up Bars. But anyway, and then Ben and I got married a year later, and he moved out to Flagstaff. So now we're here with the group. And then, we had been together for about 7 years at this time. So of course I'm thinking about kids, and I'm thinking, how do you plan that? Do you stop your career? What do you do? And I knew I wanted kids before I got much older, but there was never a good time to really stop. And so after the disappointment of dropping out of the marathon trials, I told myself to just rally, let go of it, move on. I came back and I ran the track trials, and I got 8th in the 10K. I think I had run like 32:24 at the trials. Still far cry from making the team, but at least I was kind of moving up. And then I ran the Honolulu Marathon that December, and I was 3rd there. I ran 2:32, which felt like indicative of my PR because Wilson Kipsang won it that year, and he ran like 2:12. And I'm like, okay, well, if Kipsang has run 2:04 and he runs 2:12 at Honolulu, does that mean I can take off 7 minutes from my time?
32 in Honolulu is very good. It's hilly and high.
Right? You know how that works? Exactly. So I started to be like, all right, maybe I'm like a 2:27 marathoner, but you're not until you do it. And then we ended up leaving the group, and it kind of disbanded. And then Ben coached me 2013. And that was one of the best years of my career. I was second at I was 3rd at the 15K champs. I was 4th at the US half marathon champs. And then I was 2nd at the 10K champs in Peachtree. So I started to have all these like 2nd, 3rd, 4th place finishes at US champs. And I was like, okay, like I'm really like, I'm moving my way up. And that's what made me believe, like, I'm glad I decided to keep pushing forward. And this is what I'm supposed to do in my career. And then in August of 2013, I found out I had a stress reaction in my femur. And instead of getting depressed, I said, well, why don't I try to get pregnant? And then I got pregnant 2 months later. And so that kind of worked out. And I had Riley in June of 2014. And I said, this is great. The Olympic marathon trials are 18 months away. That's a great amount of time for me to, get back on it, try to get back stronger and make it to that start line and try to make the team. And then when I was 6 months postpartum, we got a little surprise and I was pregnant with our second child, Hudson. So yeah, that really threw a wrench in my whole plan and life and what I thought was supposed to be. But looking back now, it was the best thing that could have ever happened. They're now best friends and I have 2 beautiful boys, and I kind of had a forced break in the middle of my career. And then I guess that's what got me to where I'm at now. We met Coach Ben Rosario when he moved to Flagstaff in 2014, and he said, I want to put a training group together, and I want it to be a real professional group, different than any other group out there, and I want you and Ben to be on board. But I was still pregnant at the time, and he said he would still coach me through that. And then I had to tell him I was pregnant again after. So it's amazing all the people that stuck by me when I had 2 back-to-back pregnancies. And then Hoka signed our group shortly after that. And then it's been, ever since then, it's been an amazing story and timeline.
But then you're sort of leaving out the part, coming back from 2 kids and starting to dominate everything. So was there any doubt when you had the kids that you would come back to this form? The picture that went viral, was that when you were pregnant or you posted it afterwards?
That was postpartum. That was right before the 2016 Olympic trials. Basically, I still wanted to run the 2016 marathon trials, and my heart wouldn't let go of it, but I was only going to be 5 months postpartum. And in my head, I was like, Stephanie, this is so stupid. You're not going to make this team. What do you think you're going to do? Women are running 224, 225, and you just had a baby 5 months ago. And it took me all the way until a month before to actually accept that. So once I accepted that and realized I should just be a spectator, I focused my efforts towards track. And then at Stanford, which I would have been 7 months postpartum, I ended up running 32:14, and that was 1 second under the Olympic standard. And I was like, okay, maybe I have a shot to possibly make this track team. But then just postpartum caught up to me. My pelvis started hurting and I just was having a lot of issues. And about a month before, I had to take 3 weeks off leading into the trials. And realistically, I shouldn't even run the trials, but I wanted to, and I don't know, I finished 21st place, and it was one of the worst races of my career. But that was a moment where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back from these 2 kids. Women are running low 31, and I just ran 34 minutes at the trials. But again, that stupid voice in my head just said, keep believing and don't give up. And so I kept doing Coach Ben's training, and I dropped out of a lot of workouts because I couldn't handle the paces, but he just believed in giving them to me. And it probably took me a full 2 years to really absorb his training and to actually see results in races of that training. The end of 2016, I ran CIM, and that was my first marathon postpartum. I was 15 months postpartum, and I ran 2:32. And it honestly was a disappointment to me, whereas so many people were like, dude, this is great. Your baby's 15 months and you ran 2:32. And it did show me that I could get back to the highest level if that was a bad day for me. But I wanted more, I guess. And I believe there was more in me. But then, as you said, World Cross happened in 2017. I snuck on that team, and then I got 22nd at World Cross. And then I brought my 10K time down to 31:59. And I was like, okay, I'm making steps. They're not as quick as I want, but I'm getting better each month and each year. So I just had to keep believing. And then, it took up until probably 2018 where I really started to believe in myself. I started to believe in how fast I was, that I could kick people down because I always got outkicked in races. And it was just a mindset. I think the race was Rock and Roll Arizona 2018. I went out there to just do like a easy marathon pace run. And Ben's like, I just want you to run like 540s, 545s. This is very early in training. We're not that fit. But there was a girl in the race, Elvin Kibet, who she's married to Shadrach Kipchoge, and she started to run 540s, and then she started to run 535s. And I'm like, I'm just going to go with her and see what happens. And of course, the competitive side of me took over. And he said he gave me the green light at 10 miles. And if I was with someone, I could start racing. So we had already been running like low 530s. And then at 10 miles, there's this big uphill you do in Phoenix. And then you do a turnaround and you come back down. So I just put the hammer down. And I think that next mile was like 522. And she was still right there. And the next mile was like 518. And I didn't know her at the time. I'm like, how am I not dropping her right now? And then with about a mile to go, she went ahead of me. And I said, I guess this is it. Like, I'm done. And that old narrative of you get out kicked was in my head. And then something just switched. And I'm like, no, you're not done. Like, just go around her and wait till the finish. Like, you have half a mile to go. And I went around her, and then we were neck and neck with 200 to go. And then I just sprinted as hard as I could. And I won the race by a second. I think we ran like 72-30, 72-29 or something. Yeah. And then that honestly set the tone for 2018. And I just started to believe that I could outkick people.
That's pretty cool. I'm kind of looking back at your races, and I'm looking at nationals every year and saying, oh, she got confidence here or whatever. But it's, one of these races I would never have thought about.
Yeah. And then I just told myself that year, I said, nobody passes you in the last mile of any race. And in 2018, besides New York Marathon, I never got passed in the last mile by anyone. And that was the really cool thing, that I held myself accountable.
I mean, yeah, it was a great year last year. And then it's gone pretty well this year too. And just listening to your story, you're talking about, one, you're a dreamer. You keep sort of, aiming for that Olympics, which is great. But then you're talking about like how you believe. And that reminded me of your Instagram this week. Essentially, you said, I firmly believe in the power of your thoughts and how your body perceives things. I felt like garbage the last few days heading into Sunday's race. I was supposed to get my period Saturday, and as many women experience, PMS symptoms can be dreadful. I had a poor tune-up workout on Wednesday in Flagstaff, and honestly, I was worried if I was doomed for the race. All my training has been super solid, and my thoughts of feeling crappy were getting to my head. Amazing how we can almost let one bad workout trump the accumulation of so many successful ones. I'll have to skip the next part because I'm not a woman. Wow. No, I'm reading it. Wow, I hadn't gotten down to all this part. My cycle came right on cue Saturday night. I felt bloated and my digestion was all kinds of crazy. Like I needed the bathroom about 2 minutes into the race. I wore bulky underwear under my buns, which looked awesome, I'm sure. I mean, as a man, I never knew this happened. This even goes on with you guys. I did so because racing with a tampon postpartum, well, I should have read this before we got on the air. I'm sorry. There's just no telling what's going to happen down there. I share this so you can understand we don't always feel invincible superheroes when we race, but we can still achieve things when we feel bad. For me, this win is important mentally because I didn't accept my body telling me how bad it felt. I had to tell my mind to shut up in the race and just run. I believed in my fitness. I believed in the chance to find out how much I wanted it. I mean, that's just a great story. I think everybody can learn from. And like one thing I'm amazed with is like the top people in the sport, they don't have bad days. They don't have bad races. Very, very rarely, right? Like once these people figure out how to win, you rarely see them have a bad race, right? They can't always be on their A game, but I think they've learned that they're confident. They believe in themselves. They know, hey, I had a bad workout. I don't feel bad today. Well, I can still give it a go. I can still do pretty good. I mean, do you feel like a different runner when you're in the line now?
I do. I just think like I've run through feeling like shit in workouts and in training. And there's this perception that you have to feel like awesome in a race, or I've never had a race where I'm like, this is so easy, like never. And I think that's a gift because I don't ever expect it to be easy. I expect it to be really hard, and I train hard. And there's this great quote. It's like, I don't train so the race feels easy. Like it's going to be hard. I train so I can tolerate that hard. And so that's what I feel like I just tolerate that. And I've always believed that if I'm firing and all my blood levels and everything and I'm healthy, I like to believe I can go through more pain than some people. And that's how I beat people in certain races. And so that has grown as I've gotten fitter and stronger over the years, that I just can dig down deeper.
I mean, it's a cool story that you figured it out. And now you're like a full-fledged professional. You got Hoka sponsoring you. I saw you have a bed sponsor.
I do.
What's that called? I was looking at
it's Bed Gear. They were the official mattress and bed sponsor of the New York Marathon. And I ended up getting contacted by them, and I met their CEO, Eugene Aledo. And one, like, at this point in your career, you get a lot of people like reaching out to you on social, and they're like, we think you'd be a great fit. And it's all like, most of it is crap. But like, what I loved is I actually loved their mission statement and they loved mine. And it was kind of this natural fit that I'm like, yeah, like I actually believe in wanting to promote you guys because I believe in your company, and I believe in the beds. I believe in the pillows. I believe in the sheets, like the whole idea behind, we go out and get fitted for shoes and gear, but we're sleeping most of our life, and we're sleeping to like recover from training. Why don't we pay that much attention to like our sleep environment? And so that's why I just kind of got on board with them.
So they sell mattresses?
Yep.
Yeah, maybe I need a new one.
You do. Yeah. They're based in Long Island.
It's weird. As I get older, not quite a third. I used to spend a third of my life at least asleep. Now it's probably slightly less. I moved to New York this year. I got married, but my wife likes the bed better than me. We got to find something.
I'll introduce you guys in New York when I come.
All right, I'll check it out. And like Picky Bars, how involved with that are you? And some of these other things?
Yeah, so Lauren and Jesse run the business basically in Bend, and it takes honestly more effort to involve me on a day-to-day basis. So I'm not involved there. I'm just involved in our big decisions. And then I try to be, I guess, our most active proponent. Like, they're what I eat before every race and workout, and my kids are obsessed with the snacks, and I just try to be really vocal and share them everywhere I go and really spread the word about them. That's kind of my best role right now.
You guys are now, I'm trying to think where I saw you guys. It's like one of the bigger stores.
We're in REIs across the country. We're in lots of like local groceries, like in Eugene and Market of Choice and the Pacific Northwest. And then our biggest thing is our Picky Club. And that's where people can get like the monthly subscription, and it just automatically comes to your door, and you can pick your flavors and how many you want, which is kind of cool. You don't have to think about it, and it just arrives at your door.
Oh, I think I haven't done the Picky Club. Maybe it was my grocery in Texas or something. I was like, wow, if they're here, they're really making it now. This is kind of cool. Well, you got a lot going on, and then you have two kids on top of it and are doing all of that. Do you think being busy helps your running?
I do. I think it's, a busy person is a productive person. And I've never had the personality. Yeah, I could watch movies all day, like when I was younger, but now like there's just so many things. I just want to like help so many people. And I'm always like driven to certain causes, and I want people to like live their most awesome life. And so I'm trying to find ways to make everyone I come across like do that. And it just keeps me busy. So I'll be answering emails from fans, or trying to do promotions, or write blogs, or I don't know. I just like, I'm so drawn towards the process and the passion of like making our sport better than when I got here, and just making other people's lives better, that it's the only way I know how to operate.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, as a successful professional runner, you get this opportunity to influence a lot of people, and I'm glad you realize it and enjoy sort of having subtle influence on people's lives, because you don't know what, it might be a kid, it might be an adult out there. A lot of people, I think, can learn from your story. Couple quick questions. I'd asked John and Robert what they wanted to ask you, and one was this, two of the questions we kind of touched on is like, how has she come back so well from the kids? And they were kind of asking, maybe it's related to the childbirth, but like Sarah Hall's never had kids, and she's running very well in her 30s as well. Do you think there's something with women running well in their 30s, or are we just generalizing too much? I mean, there's men running well in their 30s as well.
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing, and this isn't a knock, but like when people were first like, oh, wow, post kids, sometimes I have to say, well, I was good before I had kids. And so I think some people like did forget that about me. Like I had run decent times and I'd run 2:29 in the marathon. I ran 70:53, 32:20 in the 10K before kids. I just think I wasn't in the right training program and I didn't have Coach Ben's workouts. And so I think what happened was then I had kids, and it takes, that was a good 3 years of 18 months of pregnancy and then another 18 months of trying to come back from them. I started doing his training, and then now you're seeing 3.5 years postpartum of my last baby. Now it's all starting to come together. And honestly, like, I don't even think I've touched on what I'm capable of running. And that's what's like really encouraging, that everyone's really excited for me, and I am too, but I still think there's like a whole lot more in me. And I think, yes, women, as we get older, like we get more testosterone as we age as well. So I think our recovery ability, is a little higher. As we get into our 30s, we have a little more muscle mass. Like that's why you see women can like lean out and get more muscular into their 30s versus like when you're in your 20s. And I think that is the reason too why, if you just can stay healthy, you're just seeing all this accumulation of training.
Interesting. I didn't know the testosterone thing.
Well, because think about it, we go into menopause, so you're actually like losing the estrogen, and so gaining more testosterone to a point. When you have too much, then you don't want that.
Robert asks, what do you consider your number one accomplishment? Sport.
Oh, okay. I was like giving birth to Riley and Hudson.
I'm like in the sport, but right. Okay, giving birth, we got that one. What about running?
Gosh, that's really tough. I thought it was going to be winning Peachtree last year, and then I would have thought like winning the title here. But part of me almost thinks it's going back to getting third at USA's on the track last year. That was like a really big moment for me to realize I don't run track all the time, but I can still compete. And it was a great field that I ran against too, getting third behind Molly Huddle and Mariel Hall. That was like a huge confidence booster to me. So that, I would say that would be the highlight of my career so far.
It's funny because like we're so focused on who wins the races, and at nationals there's a lot of races going on. And now I'm looking at the result, like you beat Emily Sisson.
Well, yeah, it's cool if it worked that way. They're like, oh, cool, Emily Sisson just ran 30:49 and 2:23 and I beat her. But running doesn't work that way. I think she had some hiccups in training, so she wasn't 100%, but it's still like we were neck and neck. We were kicking that last 400 together, and I was able to outkick her. So that was a cool moment for me, and I'll take that going into this year and the track trials next year.
Yeah, so if you make the Worlds team this year, will that mess up your marathon plans? Because Worlds are so late, or you haven't thought that far ahead?
I haven't thought that far ahead, but I'll have to see what Coach Ben wants me to do.
It's a good problem to have,
It
right?
is. It is.
All right, so I'm going to start asking people to give one piece of advice to either like a high school. I say high schoolers because I think kids sometimes know nothing about running, but if you don't want to do high school, what's one piece of advice you give to runners out there?
I happened to tweet it yesterday, but it's something that's been on my mind. And I said that like I had never won a big race in the first 5 years of my professional career, and a national title took 10 years. And I didn't PR in the marathon or half marathon for 6 or 7. And I just said, be in it for the long game. And I think that's so important because everybody wants to be good yesterday. But if you can just stick with it and like never quit, you will start beating the people that either do quit or don't make it as far in the sport. And you'll start like reaching like your true potential if you just, stay in it for the long game.
I think that is great advice. And I think too many people want instantaneous success. And I think that's one of the best things about running is I don't care how talented you are at running, you can't be good unless you put in the work, and sometimes the work takes years. You're the one runner I'm allowed to root for, so I'm going to be rooting for you big to make that Olympic team.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And thank you for your time. As I said, this would go more than 30 minutes, but that's because it was so interesting.
Well, thank you.
And I hope Flagstaff still is super cool. It's like a running mecca now. I can't believe how many people are out there.
It is. It's really awesome out here.
Yeah. Well, I'm jealous. I miss it. But what's your next race?
The New York Mini 10K, so the US 10K champs.
June 9th?
Yep, June 8th.
I'll check my calendar, but I better be here.
Be there, yeah.
Well, I hope to see you then, and thanks for your time.
Here's a real quick
bonus story with Stephanie that came up after what we thought was the end of the podcast?
Yeah, so my sophomore year, we found out that my dad's company had gone bankrupt, and the money that was like left to us basically was zero, and my mom was going to have to pull me out of school. And it was like devastating to me because out-of-state tuition was really expensive since I was from Arizona. And an article was written about me in the Santa Barbara newspaper, and then Coach Dolan called me into the office next week, and he said, "Stephanie, somebody read your article and an anonymous donor wanted to fund the rest of your college career." And I don't know, that was close to $60,000 or $70,000 just by simply reading my story. And it was like overwhelming. And I'm like, how am I ever going to repay this person? And since I can't ever repay them, that's like always in the back of my mind in life. Like, I want to make people's lives better, and I want to just try to give back in a way, because you never know like who is struggling or who you can help. And I think that's what makes me like hustle in so many ways, wanting to try to like, change people's lives in whatever capacity I can, because somebody changed the trajectory of mine.
That's a crazy story.
It is. It really is. Okay, now I got to go pick up my kids. Okay, thank you. Okay, bye.